Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to episode number 92 of the Avocado Gamescast, the gaming podcast of The Avocado. I'm Merve, and today I'm joined by our editor, the Kappa, to talk about all things Summer Game Fest. How are you doing, Kappa?
Good, getting near 100.
Oh,
You know, I,
yeah,
we're
just
gonna have
ate
to tell
off.
people, attendance is mandatory when we hit 100. We're gonna have to everyone has to show up.
We'll throw a
But
big, like, party
yeah,
in
yeah,
the chat,
yeah.
get people dancing around.
Stream it or something. But no, yeah, it's exciting. This is always my favorite time. I think me and you are kind of similar. We like to get a little hyped about stuff. We like to get excited. So this is a pretty fun, week or two um, of not E3.
Yeah, it's good that you say that because I do sometimes come across as pretty cynical about video games, but I
Yeah.
like being excited about stuff. I like looking
I
at
think it's
something and
easier
yeah,
to be cynical in a lot of ways, and it makes sense. And no one's going to argue with you about being cynical. But yeah, it's to me, it's the season of promise. It's like
yeah.
making a New Year resolution or something, right? like,
The way
yeah,
I
I'm
see it,
probably not going to join that gym, but maybe.
yeah, like the way I see it is, yeah, I'll always be cynical about the conditions under which these things are produced, but I'm never going to be. I don't want to ever become cynical about the art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean.
So
Because as
that's
soon as you
why.
start doing that, it's like whatever. We'll get more into it later.
Yeah, like why am I even excited about this medium anymore? Why are we even doing this podcast, right?
Yeah.
But before we get to Summer Game Fest, let's just take a few minutes to talk about what we've been playing lately.
Sure.
Kappa, what have you been up to?
So this is kind of somehow or other. I ended up doing. I think I can. I don't remember. Check my idea. I did a little playtest not too long ago for EA, and it was, you know what I mean. Like if you sign up at EA, I think you can do these kind of playtests, and usually they'll, you play a game for an hour. They ask your opinions on it and stuff, right? And so the rewards for this one were we'll basically give you like a handful of EA games. And I was like, oh, okay,
Oh,
whatever.
nice.
I own most of them, but sure, let's see what, I can get. So I got Battlefield 2042 from them, and I've heard it all. I've heard how bad it is and everything. And it is bad. But that was my free choice. I was like, you know what? New season came out. I think it just came out last week. So I threw it on there, just trying to dip my toes. I've talked about this, I think, before here, but I feel like everybody had like what was your shooter, right?
Yeah.
For mine was very much Halo for a long, 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 long time, right? Then there was a little bit where okay, fine, I'm going to play PC shooters, and at first mine was Wolfenstein. Was it what was their version of Enemy Territory called? I want to.
Is it
Wolfenstein had a version.
like Wolfenstein, Return to Castle
Turning
Wolfenstein, or is
Castle Wolfenstein. That's it. That's it. Yeah.
okay?
And then I slowly kind of migrated into Battlefield. And like Battlefield was like my main shooter for a long time. Like when it was COD or Battlefield, it was Battlefield for me, right? So I thought let's go check out what's going on here. And I mean, it's hard to explain, but like Battlefield's always had a really nice paper rock scissors tank thing going on, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, I found
you know,
Call of Duty felt really. I don't want to call it shallow, um, because it's not. There's a lot of technique, but it's very skill based, very twitchy.
right,
Battlefield is a
right.
lot more strategic, and yeah, a lot more of that rock
Yeah,
paper
you're on
scissors
a
thing.
sniper and you get shotgunned in a quarter, and you're like, well, yeah, that's what happens. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you don't get that moment where you're like, oh, if only I'd have, Like, no, it makes sense. But um, my very first match, I get into it, and there is a YouTuber in there in a helicopter. I swear to God, he had 250 something kills, right? And all he was just in this helicopter. Nobody could shoot him down. He had he was just too good. And I was like, man, this sucks. And what an awful way to kind of, and he's just farming us for kills for his YouTube. And I'm wish him luck. I don't remember his name, but I'm sure he's got a great channel going on there. But what an awful way to get into it. It's like, all right,
How many
whatever.
years ago was it now? Like, you must have been canceled by now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like now I'm just playing into it, and I'm not feeling the paper rock scissors anymore because they added another layer to it, right? And it was their commitment to going to a class based thing that I think
Oh
was
yeah,
such a mistake. And I
they
mean, it
turned
was
it
easy
into
to
a
talk
hero
about.
shooter.
Yeah. And like so now you've got down to the gun, down to the ability, down to this, down to that, and it's like I get killed by some guy who uses a zip line to get to a place that I literally can't get to. It's just little things like that I feel like are such a mistake in Battlefield. It doesn't need that layer of hero shooter to it. And I'm betting it was done to sell, maybe, I don't know, maybe cynically sell cosmetics, but I don't know if that really makes a ton of sense. I just don't know why. I don't think it was something the series needed or missed or anything.
I think it was trend
Every,
chasing because
I think
Overwatch
so.
was big at the time it was being developed, and by the time uh, Battlefield 2042 came out, Overwatch was no longer in vogue.
Mhm. What I will say though is one thing that I actually appreciate is there is a server browser, even on console.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I think that's a very cool commitment. And I've only heard bad stuff about it. I've never actually heard anybody else ever point that out. It's kind of, 3 or 4 menus deep. I think they definitely want you playing on the different modes and stuff. But nope, there's, you can go in there and play with like different rule sets and stuff, same as you always could, so server browser style. And the other thing I thought that was kind of cool that they did with this is they've got like a Battlefield Generations type thing going on, where you can go in and play like a rule set like with Battlefield 1942 guns and characters and weapons. So like there was like a server I was in where it was like 30 World War II guys against 10 like modern warfare guys, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of cool, like it adds a layer to it. There was some kind of map that was like a gun game where you start out as like a World War II guy, and then each kill you get, you're slowly working your way up the ladder to a modern warfare type thing. And I think it was against zombies. I don't know. I only played it for like 10 minutes because I had real bad lag with it. But that I thought was interesting. I mean, there's some cool stuff there, but I don't know. Battlefield's in a bad spot. I feel like I could say that about every shooter right now, though. I mean, if you look across the board, I think all of them are in their little unique bad spots, right? So, I mean, maybe not COD, but I feel like COD's got something going on under behind the scenes, or obviously there's that huge controversy going on right now with it. So I feel like it's always vulnerable to
What's
game
the
to
big?
game.
Oh, the big controversy involving
Yeah,
Nick Merckx and the skins.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
well, Nick
yeah, yeah.
Merckx and his skins, and then his friends kind of coming behind him and saying, if he doesn't have a skin, we don't want a skin either. And then it's a very bad look, Pride Month and all. And I don't understand. I don't. This is just me. I don't think creators should have skins. Period. They are far too prone to putting their whole foot in their mouth. I think that's a mistake in the first place. But
Yeah.
sure, if that's what you're gonna do, that's what you're gonna do. But um, I don't know.
Like,
But
yeah, you do need to face the consequences of doing that if that's what you do with your game, right?
exactly. And I think so. I mean, I think Call of Duty's got a couple weird spots. Battlefield's definitely got some spots. Halo's got some spots. I don't know if PlayStation even has a shooter. There's
Well,
a
we're going to
lot.
get to that in a little
Yeah, I
bit.
know, I know. But yeah, I don't know. So checking out Battlefield was kind of more of me being like, I am feeling the need for a shooter that isn't my mainstay, which is Destiny. Destiny's got such good shooting, though. I mean, everything else thrown out the window. The shooting is so good in Destiny, it makes other games like comparatively feel awful. Like I don't know how to explain it. Just every little thing
Oh,
that Bungie does somehow with that game just feels right when it comes to the shooting. So um,
I feel
it's been
s-
hard to get back into other things for sure.
I feel very similarly about Halo Infinite
Hmm.
because I enjoy the basic mechanics of that game so much that I've been spoiled for other multiplayer shooters. I don't want to
Yeah,
even play them.
yeah.
So every few weeks, I'll just dip into Halo Infinite and play a match or two just to like experience that adrenaline
Seriously,
rush.
this was what I was thinking about. Like this, I don't know. You probably tell me I'm wrong, but I think that there's a lot of games right now, and idea actually came to me when I was playing Far Cry 6. But they put guns or weapons in the game that are purposely bad, so that when you get better ones, they feel better because of the ones that you have been using were purposely bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's a lot of that in Call of Duty where it's just like this is your starter gun, it sucks. Your goal should be to get out of this gun. And that's a very like Diablo or like, you know what I mean, type thing, or looter shooter thing, where obviously Destiny's a looter shooter, but you can pick up your starting gun and it feels good, right? It might do a little less damage or it doesn't have the perks and stuff, but the gun itself doesn't feel shitty shooting it, you know? I think it's a very smart thing to do. Not every game can do that, obviously, because they're all not running like numbers behind the scenes like Destiny is. But
Yeah.
when I go and I play a Call of Duty or Far Cry or something else, and I get that gun, I'm like, oh, this gun's supposed to suck. I'm supposed to get rid of this gun. It's the starter gun. And I'm like, but why? Halo doesn't have starter guns. You pick up that fucking, assault rifle, it's going to feel the same now and 20 levels from now.
See, this
So
is why I
yeah.
appreciate Halo Infinite. There's no character progression. If I wanted character progression, I'd go play Destiny.
Yeah.
I don't want to want to open up Call of Duty and then have to crawl my way up from the ground when everyone else has had like an 8-month head start on me.
Exactly. And that's what Battlefield feels like right now. Everybody's had that head start, and you're jumping into a pit of snakes, basically, so
Yeah.
that YouTuber can farm you for kills. And it's just like, I'm using this starter gun, and it's got crap attachments, and I've got to get 100 kills with the crap attachments to get the good attachment. But Jesus, I can't get kills with the crap. You know what I mean? Like, I'm already starting behind the 8 ball, kind of. So yeah, that's kind of my little rant. I don't know if I was making a shooter today, and it was supposed to be a classic FPS, jump in, jump out, play with your friends, go in a lobby, I would do that. I think it's just a big mistake, honestly. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and especially because when you want to play with friends and then you'll be at different levels of progression, it becomes so hard to coordinate that because then
Yeah.
like one guy will be way far ahead, and then your other friend, maybe they'll be, starting at level 2 because they've only played a few matches, and then playing together becomes really difficult.
And it feels very bad for your friends to sit there and be like, I can't even help you do this because I'm using this crap gun and this crap gear and in this crap situation. And, you're slaying 10 guys over there. And I'm just looking at you like, good job, friend. So, yeah, I think a lot of times, you can see with Call of Duty, they'll balance guns left, right, center, right? Sometimes the starter guns will be the good ones. But I don't know. I mean, picking up COD or Battlefield right now feels like they're pushing me on the progression more than the experience that I'm getting out of the box. Go unlock all these attachments. Go unlock all these things so that the gun that you have that feels like shit right now, maybe it'll feel good in 500 kills or 20 experience or whatever, but who knows? Maybe it doesn't. And like
They want to put you on that treadmill.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's why when you see Call of Duty videos now, all you're looking at is people listing out metas like it's like a MOBA, Hey, this is the gun, this is the grenade, this is the attachment, this is what everybody's using. Get out there and do it, That's kind of that feels weird for a shooter, right? I
Yeah,
don't
the
ever
second
remember
you're
someone,
layering game theory on top of a shooter, I think you've kind of missed the point, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I do think a lot of that, and it's hard not to for me to bring up Destiny, but I think Destiny sucked a lot of air out of the shooter world for a long time, and it's only just now starting to come back in. But I think they forgot how to do shooters without looters.
Yeah.
You know,
Loot's become like, post-game loot or post-match loot has become such a huge part of multiplayer shooters, especially free-to-play
Right.
ones.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even if it's skins or if it's boxes or if it's whatever, it's just now there is a whole screen that you've got to stick at the end of the match to. What game was it where they were talking about? I can't remember exactly what was happening, but it was like you would get beat more often by people with cosmetics, and they would show you the cosmetic that beat you, so you could be like, "Oh, I need to unlock that." Was that COD? I don't remember what it was, but it was like one of those like insidious like things where it's like, yeah, if you lose this match to this type of cosmetic, it'll show you the cosmetic that killed you.
I've
it was
heard
kind
of
one those
this,
things.
but I can't remember if it was a thing that was actually implemented or if it was a thing that was patented and then
Yeah, exactly.
people wrote news articles about it and then it never got implemented.
Yeah. But anyway, that's why I've been playing Battlefield. I don't know. It's one of those like, can I recommend? I don't know. Like I think it's on Game Pass forever now that like EA seems to have this deal with Microsoft. So, like I say with everything, if you're not sure, Game Pass that bad boy.
Yeah, just try it out. You got Game Pass. Could hurt to dip your toes in, waste an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of shooters, I have been playing a shooter, but a very, very different kind of first-person shooter. It's called Slayers X, Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer, and Vengeance is misspelled as Vengance.
Yes, I love this. I haven't played it, but this thing is every streamer's been on this one, and it looks so fun. Yeah.
This is one of the weirdest gaming experiences I've had, and I'm only halfway through, so I don't know if it gets any weirder. But just for our listeners, if y'all remember the game Hypnospace Outlaw, which was this really weird, unique point-and-click adventure where the interface was a desktop in an operating system that looked like Windows 98, and all the web pages you visited in the game looked like the late 90s internet, but they kind of gave it all this vaporware sheen. So this game is sort of based on that. There's a character in Hypnospace Outlaw named Zane Lofton, who's this edgy outcast teen. And Slayers X is marketed as a game that was created by Zane when he was a teenager, but he kind of left it on the shelf, and then now he's in his 30s and he's got a kid, and he decided to polish up that game and release it commercially. So the devs actually did pre-release promotion for the game in character as Zane. Like, I think they did this interview with Nintendo Life where was it Nintendo Life? I forget which publication. I'll put it in the link dump, where they like interviewed Zane in character. What this game actually is, it's a retro style boomer shooter.
Yeah.
Like exactly the kind of game you'd expect an edgy teen to dream up in 1998. So by the standards of 2023, it has deliberately bad graphics.
Yes.
And
yes.
all over the subtitles, they deliberately put spelling errors, like common malapropisms, common spelling errors and typos that people make. And the cutscenes are like, I don't know if you folks remember like cutscenes from late 90s games, or like, I shouldn't say late 90s, like mid 90s games, where they were just messing around with 3D animation and cutscenes.
Yeah, and the other thing, like from what I've watched about it too, the best way I can explain it is it looks like a mod on top of a mod type scenario. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you had a friend who was really into like modding Doom, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna put guns from Wolfenstein in Doom, and then like, you know what I mean? Like make some kind of custom background of skeletons and stuff. The feeling is that there is a game behind here that he's doing this too. Like this isn't his own actual. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it feels like he heavily modded Doom.
Yes, exactly.
That's kind of what it feels like. Like he didn't build the game engine from scratch.
Right.
So you've got this really interesting balance that because it has to feel like it's a cringy game made by a teenager, but it also can't be unfun to play.
Right.
So it's walking this really narrow tightrope and somehow pulls it off. Like it's fun to play, but you're also cringing the whole time while you're playing it.
It's a tough tightrope to walk, right? I mean, Blood Dragon did it, you know.
Yeah.
Nukem didn't. It's hard to get that retro feel, shitty but good, and making you want to go from, you know, like I feel like this is like the area that the Postal series has lived in forever. You know,
right? Yeah,
and it never really kind of grew up out of it, and now it's kind of become not funny, like regressively bad and unfun to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But this one looks like, and you know what else is smart? It's short as shit. I mean, I don't know how long it is, right? But I mean, like I said, I've been watching people play it more than playing it myself, but it definitely feels like the kind of game you can sit through and get through the weekend, which is what those shooters used to be, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, so
I'm 2 hours in. I'm halfway through.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah. So I mean, very cool idea, start to finish, you know?
Absolutely. This is a really neat, like, artistic experiment. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they could ever pull this off again. Like, it's a very singular thing that I don't want them to try again because, like, the joke won't be funny anymore after this. But it works really well. It's a fun boomer shooter. It also serves as like an interesting character study of the guy who made it.
Yeah.
So it kind of works on that meta level, or the guy who made it in the fiction of the game. So like you can see that Zane is like designing levels and designing the plot of the game to kind of work through his personal issues, like his mom getting a new boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then the mom boyfriend becomes the villain in the game. It's its own special weird brand of cringe. If you are into this kind of thing, or like have played Hypnospace Outlaw and also happen to like first-person shooters, I would recommend it. But you kind of have to play Hypnospace Outlaw before you play this to fully appreciate what it's going for. So difficult to recommend, but I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, I think this would be you need to be in that sweet spot. This would be like the kind of thing you're familiar with. You know,
you have to be the very special brand of gaming hipster that I am to enjoy this.
You've dipped your toes in enough to know what's going on in these worlds, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is what they're. Yeah, like there's definitely, even in movies, you know, if you're watching something where you don't know the thing it's lampooning, it's not always doesn't always hit the spot, but. I really like this game. This is the kind of game that I can see myself getting. I'm surprised it's not on Game Pass because it seems like it'd be perfect for it. But yeah,
I think it would be perfect for that kind of thing. So hopefully it gets added up there eventually. Speaking of watching things that lampoon something before the actual thing that's being lampooned, I watched Spaceballs like a decade before I watched Star Wars.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but like I'd absorbed enough of Star Wars through cultural osmosis that I mostly understood what it was making fun of. Now I've seen all the Star Wars movies, and we'll get into that in a little bit. We have to talk about Star Wars because Star Wars featured prominently at Summer Game Fest, which we are going to talk about right now. But we're not going to start with Star Wars. We're actually going to start before Summer Game Fest by talking about the PlayStation Showcase that aired on May 24th. So this was a bit of an interesting thing. It was... How do I put this? Let's just say it wasn't very well received by the gaming press, by and large.
Yeah, this was... I thought this was going to be a very safe slam dunk, just kind of, you know what I mean, do what you've done single this people on the internet lost their fucking minds, right? Like this one was a lightning rod.
People got really angry about this. And
I
like
thought it was okay.
I can't say I got angry. I didn't like it, but I can't say I was angry about it.
You know, I think the thing is it ended and my initial thought was still don't need a PS5, right? That's not good. That's not a good thought, right? Like, because my Xbox One X died, and I've been kind of kicking around. Okay, do I get a PS5 to replace it, or you know, it's a smart TV, so I can just keep up with the whatchamacallits on it, you know? So
I feel like if you're fine playing Sony Prestige games 3 years after they come out,
the PS5, that's exact and buggy as hell. But yeah, that's where I am now. You know?
Yeah.
I can wait. I can wait for these games to hit PC. That's what I was as I was watching this. I played God of War remake on PC. I played Horizon Zero Dawn on PC. You know, I didn't play The Last of Us because apparently it's nuclear.
Oh, that thing's broken to hell and back. Like I think I'll probably dip my toes into the PC version of Returnal at some point because I've heard good things about it. But yeah, for the most part, I'm kind of off the Sony Prestige train now, which is so weird because I was a huge PlayStation 4 guy. I have so many PS4 games.
Yeah, I feel like I got there like maybe like a year before you did, where I was just like, I like these games, but it's like I like them like I watch a movie, you know. And I was looking at like my catalog of PS4 games. And I was like, I don't have any desire to load these back up and go through any of these stories again, which is weird because I loved them at the time, right?
Yeah.
Last of Us is a good example. I didn't play Last of Us 2, not because God knows I'm not touching that third rail, right? But I thought 1 was perfect. I thought it was legitimately a perfect game. I wanted no more from that world. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
didn't need the stories to continue. I didn't need to go into the depths of the misery mines, you know? Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I thought it was so perfect. I just didn't need more, which is weird, right? Because well, if you liked it, why did you want more? I didn't want more. I don't know what to say, right? There's
I feel like that
media
game
like that,
said
right?
what it needed to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. The prestige single player experience is a weird one, right? Because it comes down to what are you playing games for, right? Are you are you for the story, are you for this, for that, and all those things, right? But I don't know that I could ever make myself play like God of War differently or like have a different experience or something, So I don't know. I totally get what you're saying though. I mean, like I've been off different games for a while now, and it's hard because there's series or platforms or consoles when you leave, it's like I don't know if I need to go back to that. People are loving Zelda. I played the last one. I don't know, man. I got annoyed more than than anything. So, um, I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's a different thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah. But
Tears of the Kingdom is Tears of the Kingdom. I think is makes me wish that I liked Breath of the Wild. In the sense that, like, I think I mentioned this in the last episode. Breath of the Wild is a game that I am sure is objectively great, but is just not for me. I've
right,
played
right.
20 hours of it. I'm like, I get the picture, and I know I'm not vibing with
Yep.
this. I don't feel necessarily the same about PlayStation games. Like when a Sony Prestige game doesn't hit for me, we're going to take a little bit of a tangent here. Just borrowed Uncharted Lost Legacy from the library, and I'm about a third of the way through it. I think I kind of hate this game, and I don't think it's a good game. And that is, I feel like it is beholden to archaic game design concepts. It feels so like, I mean, keeping in mind that this did come out 7-8 years ago, but in 2023 these game design concepts feel so old hat and so derivative.
I agree, and I think one of the things is that we've experienced a lot of indie games, right, where it has a gameplay idea that feels fresh, right?
Yeah.
And when you're used to at least, okay, this feels fresh. When someone's sitting there and telling you this is the greatest thing ever, and you start playing it, you're like, I've done this before. I've seen this before. This is the same thing I've done in X, Y, or Z, right? Where you're chasing a feeling from an indie game, which is fresh, new, never done before, feels like something I've never played before, right? I mean, how do you compare this to what was that Neon game that came out?
Neon
or
White.
like, yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
but you see, the thing is, I don't like. I wouldn't get tired playing, say, a Yakuza game, or like a Halo game. I don't get tired with that kind of gameplay. Here, I just don't think the central gameplay is compelling enough on its own.
and you're just
That
getting from cutscene to cutscene,
yeah, I'm
right?
just going
Yeah.
from cutscene to cutscene, and the cutscenes here aren't good.
Yeah, and that's why I think I was maybe a little higher on PlayStation than the rest of the internet at large, because I was like, cool, looks like they're getting a little bit away from the solo, prestige drama experiences and at least trying some other stuff. Because I mean, I think the internet wants a God of War, a Horizon, a Uncharted, a Last of Us every single year. There's no way that's doable. You will
Based
burn
on
out.
based on PlayStation's internal development cycles, that is just not
It's not
physically or
feasible.
financially
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. So if they're saying we're going to instead, have like some of these games with a shelf life, which I would call like, the prestige stuff, and then there's going to be other stuff that's like we're going to keep it going as a live experience. Well, sure, it makes sense, right? Because you bought Bungie to do that, and I am not at all surprised that the reason they bought Bungie was just because there's no fucking way Bungie is currently worth what they paid them. As a studio that just makes Destiny and now Marathon. Do want to talk about Marathon if we can for a sec, but
Yeah. Let's actually kind of get into that because you mentioned live service games. And the point I want to make here is not so much that I'm against live service games in principle, because I'm not really. I don't play them really, but I'm not against them in principle. What I think the problem was here was they were trying to introduce an audience to something new that they don't typically sell, and they did an extremely poor job of explaining what they were selling.
Yeah, I agree. The thing I'll say about live service games is it's like getting married instead of going on a date, right? Like when you see a live service game and you know what it's going to be, you almost have to like embrace commitment to it, right? Like I'm going to be there, through the bad times and the good. I'm going to deal with the hardships, the shitty patches, the nerf stuff like that, right? The Division, right? That was a live service game. I gave a couple shots and they nerfed the shit out of my guy, and I was like, I'm done with this. Never went back to it, right?
Divorce.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it felt like, right? I was like, looked at the icon and I'm like sadly deleting it. But no, they put my marksman build into the fucking dirt. So my entire character was built around a very specific thing, and now I'm totally useless and I've got to start from scratch. No thanks. So live service is a commitment. I think people who have experienced it or played it are like, is this the game that's going to take me away from whatever my current commitment is if I'm a live service person? Or if I'm not a live service person, is this the game that makes me one? I didn't see any of that, honestly, from what they announced, which is tough, right?
Because they didn't explain what these games were. Like, they did the cinematic trailer for that upcoming game, Concord, and it made it look like it was a space exploration game, and then afterwards you read on the PlayStation blog, oh, no. This is a multiplayer live service shooter.
Yeah, which, boy, it would be nice if Sony had one of those that they just spent a lot of money for.
Exactly. If you're trying to sell me a multiplayer live service shooter, you absolutely need to show me some gameplay of that game.
But that's what I'm getting at. So now that game, if I'm a Destiny player, right, what is that game going to have to do to get me to put down? I think I got like 10,000 hours in Destiny. What is that game going to have to do to get me to put down Destiny and pick it up? Man, it's a lot. It is a lot, right? And I know people who are, you get burned out with Destiny, take a season off, you take whatever, but that's normal, right? But what are you going to do to get me to replace my live service with your live service? That is an uphill climb. That is,
I think their strategy is to provide one-to-one replacements for things that already exist, which is silly, right? So they've got Fair Games, which is Payday, basically. Foam Stars, which is basically Splatoon.
Yeah.
And their Marathon reboot is just like, we read about it later, it's an extraction shooter. It's basically Tarkov.
Oh, man, that is a tough one.
That hurt me inside, because I was like, we're finally getting a good like single player game from Bungie with a multiplayer component, just like Marathon was back in the day. Nope. It's an extraction shooter.
It is gorgeous too, and I will download that game once and never play it. It's just
I'll probably play like one round of it and be like, I really wish there were a
some
single
guy
player
in the
campaign.
back of the map will snipe you, come take all your shit. You know what I'm saying?
Like, I'm all Tarkov out now.
I was Tarkov out about the first 5 minutes. A Hunt Showdown, that was another frustrating one for me. I don't know. I think what kept me positive on the Sony show is it felt like they were like, okay, there's a couple gaps in our catalog, and we're going to start addressing that instead of like playing to the strengths versus, giving you the weakness, right? But it still didn't move the needle for me on going out and actually buying a PS5 versus waiting a couple years to play the usually shittily ported product that someone eventually comes along and patches, right?
It's such a coin flip with those ports.
I know.
Some of them turned out real good, and some of them
I was actually thinking about when I'll play the full Final Fantasy VII experience, all that doesn't run like shit and is all PC ported stuff. It's gonna be 5-6 years. 2030, we'll be sitting around finally, here's all the Final Fantasy whatever. And
I think I'll be in my 40s by the time I start. Oh god.
But you're hitting that mine hard of Final Fantasy, by the way. That is, I don't know. I mean, I think we had a little talk in the comments back and forth a while ago, but 7 is, I think it's tapped out. I'm not wanting to go back there that bad,
I'm not a Final Fantasy guy. I famously never played one before, so all of this is just kind of washing over me. Final Fantasy 16 looks like a pretty generic take on dark medieval fantasy. Not really my thing, but if folks are into it and the combat is good, who am I to say that they shouldn't have a good time, right?
I mean, overall, Sony, I'd give it like a C plus. But oh my God, the internet, I do not think agrees with me. I was like, people were not happy with that one. Just thought pretty good, you know.
Yeah, I was like not. How do I put this? I was fine with what they were intending to do.
Yeah.
I just think they didn't give enough. If they're going to take a risk like that, they really need to give more information on what they're actually doing. You can't just say, "Oh, we've got this multiplayer game and you're gonna love it." I don't know if I'm gonna love it. You have to show me what I'm gonna love about it, right?
You know what's weird is that what you're describing, I think, was exactly like Microsoft show last year. You know what I mean? Like, when all this is coming soon, you're gonna like it. What's about it? I don't know. See you later.
Yeah. I will give props to that's a few cool looking indies kind of sprinkled throughout. The new game from the folks who made Night in the Woods, Revenant Hill, that looked pretty good. And I'm saying that as someone who didn't like Night in the Woods very much. I'll try another game by them.
So
I'll give a second kick the can.
The exclusives. For sure, Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Gran Turismo. Marathon, I'm assuming. Well, maybe not, because Bungie kind of negotiated,
Yeah.
that their own deal. Final Fantasy, I think, is exclusive.
It is. Then I would guess Concord, because that's being made by
I don't even know what
Eternal
that is,
Studios.
though. Yeah, that's kind of Foam Stars, whatever, and
Foam Stars might not be exclusive.
Oh, okay.
Because Square Enix is making that.
So that was that it? Am I missing anything?
Helldivers 2? No, Helldivers 2 is also coming to PC.
Oh, okay.
Fair Games. That's going to be
okay.
PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I feel like that was very Payday to me, and Payday 3 is coming out, so I feel like that kind of took
It
a lot
is
of the
literally just Payday.
wind out
It's
of the
Payday
sails.
made by Jade Raymond.
Yeah, yeah.
Jade.
I know they bought the studio with this game already coming out, right? So they might have a little Redfall situation on their hands. Who knows? But
I can't remember if Haven was incubated by Sony or if Haven was independent and then bought. I'm not sure which one. I'll have to look it up. We'll put it in the link.
Yeah, I mean, all the third-party stuff was there, like you'd expect.
Yeah, you had your Immortals of Avium. You had your...
Yeah.
They revealed this game...
Creeds. Yeah.
Then this game, they revealed Phantom Blade Zero. I was like, is this Nioh 3? No, it's Phantom Blade Zero. Completely different thing. They had that indie game, Sword of the Sea. This really did not work for me. It felt like, hey, you remember Journey? You remember Abzu? What if we stuck them together? And as someone who was...
You loved Journey, I remember. So
No, I disliked Journey.
Oh, Abzu was the one you like, right?
Abzu was the one that I kind of liked.
Yeah.
I really did not like Journey.
Yeah.
But I played Journey long after
But no
it came
one else
out.
was playing it, yeah.
Yeah, so like I played it after I'd played a lot of things that were inspired by Journey. Mm-hmm. So going back to Journey felt really like
the Spaceballs. You Spaceballs yourself.
Exactly. I played Sword of the Sea. I played Abzu and all these other like indie exploration games way before I played Journey.
Yeah.
And going back to what inspired it felt really archaic.
Yeah, I know.
You could see the really like video gaming elements in it. But like I didn't hate the experience, but didn't need to have it.
Yeah.
It was free because COVID made a lot of things free.
They were giving that game out everywhere for a while, so I think it was on like one of the Epic Games stores, like first things they gave out.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So Sony kind of whatever, and I think it was smart of them to, if this was what they knew they had, to kind of do their own thing. Like technically, maybe it wasn't. I don't know if it was part of Summer Game Fest or kind of its
it was
own.
not.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But yeah,
they did not shack up with the Keeley.
Yeah, I'm still good with waiting for their PC ports and just kind of hoping they figure it out more and more. I gotta wonder, like, there's no real good way to figure out their sales because their games come out so much more differently than like Microsoft, which is day and date usually, right? With their PC and Xbox releases, right? So usually you're getting the game 4 or 5 years down the line. I would really be curious to see what their Steam sales are still for stuff like God of War, things like that. Just very curious, to see if the money's there for them to start putting a little more effort into these ports, not being piss poor.
I think it's really something that happens on a case by case basis. What I think the problem was with The Last of Us is they had to rush it out to kind of coincide
The
with
show, yeah.
the show, and B, the rumor is that Naughty Dog did it all themselves and refused outside help despite having no
Yeah.
PC dev experience.
They've had a pretty rough studio culture too, if I remember right. There's a lot of crunch and stuff down there too. So
a lot of crunch.
Yeah.
Some managers accused of being abusive. One employee accused of sexually harassing a game journalist. It's not still the best environment. So that was PlayStation. Shall we talk about Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest kickoff? I don't remember this very well.
Yeah.
I was like half asleep during this. We got the reveal of that new Prince of Persia game, which looks a lot like a mobile game.
Yeah, I think I was talking about this as this was happening in the comments. I'm wondering if Phoenix Immortals maybe didn't sell well, but kind of gave Ubi some ideas of like, hey, maybe we have like a second tier of like maybe cheaper, less graphical fidelity type games in our big name games, and we kind of pump those out with a little more frequency. That's kind of a double A experience in that game world,
Yeah, because they want to put it on Switch, and I get you gotta like reduce the fidelity. I just don't think the particular art style they're using does the game any favors.
The thing that they're going to need to figure out. I think Phoenix was like 75% of the way there, but it still has some rough art style to it. But yeah, that's what I agree with you. I think the art style is going to be something they need to figure out, where they're not going full Nintendo, obviously, but this one is kind of splitting the difference and being like cutesy tough. I don't know how to describe it. It didn't work for me,
It looks like it's Zoomer Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
And like whatever, I'm older now. I don't want to be like one of those crusty old people who's like, kids these days have really bad taste, but it just doesn't appeal to me.
I think it's fair to say that there's a Zoomer aesthetic that we might not share that they do, but I was raised on anime, so
exactly.
I think it's
like I've been calling Foam Stars Splatoon for queer allies, because that's what it looks like. Which, like, again, not everyone who is not queer should be a queer ally. Let's be real. But that's kind of the aesthetic it's giving off.
I think that's not that specific, but I think overall that Ubi's not dumb in kind of trying to make their games a little more accessible in some ways, Yeah.
They want those sales. They want to appeal to different demographics. This is just not something that speaks to me, but I've heard the gameplay is really good.
Yeah,
that's what
I can see that. Like,
press previews have said.
I mean, look at what happened with Rabbids. Everybody was ready for that to be a gigantic flop, and then the Mario crossover being a complete waste, and then I think that ended up being one of their biggest new hits in decades. So there's something there, and I think they're just trying to kind of slowly tap into it. And I was more surprised that was a Summer Fest kickoff game, but I think that a lot of times they'll throw Jeff a bone. That's what this one felt like for them. I don't know about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I mean, I guess, like I said, I'm tired of Final Fantasy VII, and there must be something wrong with me, because I am nowhere near as interested in Sephiroth as apparently everybody else who played that game is. Looks cool, looks fun, whatever, but I don't know. Like I said, I was tapped out of Final Fantasy VII stuff after the movie. It's just a world.
Advent Children.
Yeah, it's like a world where I feel like they've plumbed the depths, and I just don't need another 80 hours of Sulking Cloud and Tifa and Aerith and all that. I just don't need it. But sure, whatever. It looks like it's some kind of like alternate reality or something. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Yeah,
I will say it looks very, very pretty. So I'm glad they've got a game that like visually pops as much as it does.
that's very
Uh,
true.
but I'm not gonna say I'm not interested in this. I just kind of want to play it all in one go
Oh
when it's
man,
out
I don't even know
eventually.
how many Final Fantasy VII games there are now. You'd be if you're just. Are you talking about just the remakes or?
Just the remakes.
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah,
not
I
gonna
gotcha.
do. I'm never gonna. I have the original on Steam. I think someone gifted it to me years ago.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna play it unless you're listening to this podcast right now. In which case, I promise I will get around to it eventually. Uh,
The
but
only other
like,
thing I
I have
think
too much to do.
that Witchfire game, I think that was. I think I got hyped about that last. What was that? Was that been Tokyo Game Show? I don't remember what the last one was, but that Witchfire game still looks pretty cool. Um, Mortal Kombat's always fun. I think I talked about this. I told you I just on a like whim um, downloaded Mortal Kombat 11. It was like on like Game Pass, and I think I just like beat the game like 50 times with different characters. You know, it's still fun. I'm not a fighting game diehard. I don't know iframes and stuff like that. You know, I can hold my own against computers and you know, I play it on like hard difficulty or whatever, but I'm not on the internet trying to do, you know, combo swaps or whatever. But I do like Mortal Kombat just for being, you know, the equivalent of a dumb action movie that you download every now and then. Um, oh, Lies of P. What the fuck? This fucking game.
It's
Like
Pinocchio, Bloodborne with Pinocchio.
conceptually, like it's clearly Timothy Chalamet as Pinocchio in a Soulsborne. I don't. The more I see of this, what is the point of the Pinocchio part? Like, am I missing something? Like, I thought it would be something about like the game mechanic, right? Oh, he lies to, I don't know, use his nose like a spear or something. But what? Why are they tying this to Pinocchio at all? Like, because it was hot
Public
2 years
domain.
ago. Yeah, exactly. Like Guillermo del Toro makes a movie, and you're like, okay, we're in. I don't know. I just think it's bizarre. Um, sure, Souls
Again,
games.
it's previewed really well,
Yeah,
so
I know. I
maybe there's something to it. I
I
don't
don't think
know.
it's a bad game. I just don't get the Pinocchio tie-in. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like if you know made a shooter and you're like, oh yeah, this is based on you know the works of Dostoevsky. Just like why? What's the point?
Get
Sure.
some real crime and punishment in
Yeah,
here.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, then there was what else was there? There was like some MMO, some Korean MMO. Oh, and the game of the fucking show. How did I forget this? Uh,
Sandland. No.
no, God. Space Marine 2. I am so fucking pumped for Space Marine 2. I didn't think it was physically possible for me to be this excited about a Warhammer game when it seems like there's a Warhammer game shit out every 45 minutes.
That's because 80% of them suck.
Yeah, it really is. And like Steam has like a Warhammer sale. They just had the most recent one, and they'll just put all the Warhammer games on sale all at once, and you're like, what the fuck are all these games? You know, there's like a Civ Warhammer, there's an XCOM Warhammer, there's a you know, so you know, like it's kind of one of those things where it's just like how are they still making them? But Space Marine is like super solid. I love that game. The smartest gameplay choice that game made is how you get back health. Hey, you want health? Good. Go in there. Start stomping things in
Punch
the
them.
head.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you get health back. You want to go hide? No, this ain't Gears, buddy. Um, so yeah, I mean, um, oh, the Toxic Commando, which is John Carpenter's game. I want to know how much interaction he had with this. But this might be pretty hype because secretly that World War Z game was pretty damn good, and that this is the studio that made that. So I'm wondering if you know, kind of if they learned enough with that to really make it its own thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I just wonder how well it'll translate to multiplayer because
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
way they've that's what they've decided to make here. Um, but I don't know. Maybe they'll manage to make multiplayer horror work. Difficult
yeah,
proposition, but possible.
yeah. I mean, anything's possible after Redfall, right? So you can only go up. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it. I think the horror there is all the bugs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, I mean, like, I think overall, like, it was a good. We're just gonna throw out a bunch of announcements at you type, thing, and most of them I think were ones that we'd either heard before or heard like a rumor before, so it wasn't like totally out of nowhere. I think except for the Final Fantasy one, but I think that I don't know. I don't keep my ear to the ground.
Everyone knew that was coming.
Yeah,
That had already been announced. This was the new trailer. The really left field one was the Street Fighter 6 Exoprimal crossover. Like, I'm not even mad. I just think this is hilarious.
Street Fighter is, man. I've always wanted Street Fighter to embrace its craziness, and it seems like it really has with this one, where people are like, you're making your own character fighters, and everybody's making, like 15 feet tall babies and stuff like that. I think it's kind of cool for a Street Fighter to kind of get with this a little bit, be a little goofy, because it's a goofy series, but they've always layered a level of seriousness on it that I don't think it's ever really needed. So, good. Have some fun with it, really.
Exactly. People really seem to be liking the new one, so
Yeah,
good
yeah,
for Capcom
yeah.
for
Capcom
making
needs mitts, and I think they're
something
going to
good.
get some. Between this Dragon's Dogma, that's Capcom, right? I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
Dragon's Dogma
Yeah,
2 is Capcom.
yeah, and I mean that if they keep that system now that everybody's kind of a little bit more, internet's a little bit better. I can't wait to like see what my friends are going to do in that game. Play with their little ghost or whatever it's called.
Yeah, they're pawns.
That's
Yeah.
it, pawn. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought this was a pretty good opening. It wasn't cringy. It was kind of just, they kept to the script. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fine. I wasn't mad to have watched it. I'd say my highlight of the show is finally getting a gameplay trailer for Like a Dragon Gaiden,
Yeah.
the man who erased his name. I was worried about how they would translate or like add something innovative to Kiryo's gameplay this time around. I like this secret agent style where you're essentially just shooting Spider-Man webs out of your wrists
Yeah, I
and
did
using
like
those
that.
to like
I thought that was
lasso
cool.
people.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that
like,
looked good.
as a new Yakuza convert, I'm fiending for playing another one. So, I think I'm on. Oh my god, I have to look at the names of them. That series is a mess of names. I'm going to be honest. I think I'm on like whatever 3 is chronologically. So, I got to figure that out. Oh,
3 is just Yakuza 3.
yeah, there we go. The Lord of the Rings Moria game got a little tease there too. I'm excited for this, but Gollum really kind of wiped a lot of my hope away.
I feel like I saw nothing here that would take me and my friend group away from Deep Rock.
Yeah, it is Deep Rock. Yeah,
It's Deep Rock without guns.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I love Lord of the Rings, like I've been talking about forever now. It's definitely like a fantasy place where I feel very comfy, cozy. So, but we'll see what happens. I think that you're going to need a little bit more than just lore to make that work. You're going to definitely need some kind of aesthetic that's going to pop a little bit more, because it really didn't. I was surprised that they did Casa Doom. I mean, yeah, sure, you've got lots of dwarf holds that you could do, because I think the easy one would have been to do the glimmering deeps. I think underneath Helm's Deep were given to Gimli at the end of Lord of the Rings, so I thought that would be kind of cool from a sense of like you're building something from scratch rather than returning something to glory, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it might have been more. I don't know. It feels like they're almost restricting themselves on purpose rather than doing something.
Because Casa Doom's already built.
New.
I mean, it's in the movies. You can see what it looks like. But, I mean, is there room to, Minecraft it up? Sure. But I would rather start something from scratch. But who knows? Maybe that'll be an expansion or something.
Yeah, it's possible. We'll see how successful it is. Let's move on to Xbox.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
this was. I think the consensus across the internet was that this was a strong showing.
I
from
agree.
Xbox.
And weirdly, I was expecting the opposite. I thought PlayStation was going to outpark, and Xbox was again going to be like, "Here's some shit we have coming eventually," and most of it was going to be kind of more indie-ish flavored. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but no real big hype except for Starfield. And there wasn't maybe huge stuff, but even the mid stuff I saw looked really good. I actually got a
I
lot
think
of
they
hype.
did, yeah, a very good job of showing off that like double A stuff
Yeah,
when they did
yeah.
show it off. Like I'll say, I don't think this was a home run of a showcase, but I think it did exactly what it needed to do, which is convince everyone that Microsoft has games in
Yeah.
the pipeline, like actual games that are going to come out, and that these games won't suck like Redfall did.
Right. And
And they did this without Halo or Gears.
yeah,
There was
and
zero Halo or Gears in this presentation.
it's different sides right now, right? Where Microsoft is basically just trying to convince you to keep paying for Game Pass, right?
Yeah,
And PlayStation is still trying to sell you on a console, right? So that's why I think PlayStation was more focused on, hey, the stuff that we don't have, if you want to buy a PlayStation, here it is. If you've already bought a PlayStation, you're already playing the stuff, the prestige first party stuff, because that's probably why you bought it in the first place, right? Whereas Microsoft's like, hey, whatever, this should all be on Game Pass. And I've said this for a couple years now. It's weird to say that, but with Microsoft, when you see something, you're like, I can play this. I can for $14. Even if I don't like it, I can try it, play it, delete it, see you later. So it's a different mindset, but I really liked what I saw from In Exile, particularly. That game looks very cool.
I
The
love the
Clockwork game,
idea of like, yeah, Clockwork Revolution. I love the idea of taking a lot of the elements from Bioshock Infinite and just like doing that game right
yeah, yeah,
instead
yeah.
of the mess that that game was. And I say that as someone who's a lot more positive on Bioshock Infinite than what the critical consensus settled on. I still think it was a mess of a game, and I would love to see someone take those aesthetics and some of those like time travel ideas and do something good with them.
Yeah, and this kind of feels like they're doing something cool with it at least. I mean, it's not BioShock obviously, but a very, 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 very close setting to Infinite, like you said. Um, Only thing I'm concerned, I was talking a little bit about this. This kind of felt like a trend a little bit, and I wish this was a character customization type game. I don't know that.
We don't know that it isn't yet, though.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that it isn't. Yeah, it seemed like they did have a main character in mind, but that might have just been like a stylistic thing for the videos.
Yeah.
But I am hoping to kind of play as my own crazy steampunk person, for the sake of of replays, because Wasteland 3, I mean, that was my game of the year. A couple years back when it came out.
Yeah.
And
It
that
was a well received game that just for some reason didn't hit it big.
Yeah. And it had a very cool aesthetic to it as well. But I think for people who were like, oh, this is just Fallout. Well, no, but I really kind of felt like for it dropping on the radar, the replayability that was really there because you were constantly making different characters with different perks and things like that. I think In Exile. I don't. This pronounces is weird for me. I think they're a very underrated studio that kind of does what a lot of people remember places like Bethesda or BioWare doing in terms of like story and characters and stuff, but they're still doing it. They're just 2 feet under the radar for most people for some reason. So this
I
might be the
hope,
one.
yeah, I hope this catapults them
Yeah, I do too.
into like that tier of game developer. This is like the risk here is that they're moving from their old like top down approach that they have done really well for
Yeah.
many years and moving into first person. But provided they've hired the right people, I think they can pull it off. So I'm going to choose to be optimistic
Yeah.
about this.
And then I'm going to take the different stance on this one with Avowed, which I think has almost the same thing going on, where you're getting the Pillars of Exile,
Pillars of Eternity.
Pillars of Eternity team looking
Yeah.
like they're going in a weird direction. Um,
I think okay. I'm going to say how I feel about this. Like Pillars of Eternity is supposed to be in a kind of dark, let's say, I don't know, 17th, not 18th century kind of steampunk-ish kind of
Yeah.
setting with magic. And everything they showed off about this made it look like the most generic fantasy
Yeah.
on the planet. It looked like up-res. I mean, I shouldn't say Morrowind's probably a bad example because it is not that generic, but it looked like color-wise like up-res Morrowind.
You know what I would describe it as? It looked like a fan mod to play an RPG in first person or something.
Yeah,
It did not pop. It didn't look good. I mean, it could still have some work to be done, obviously. So who
oh
knows
yeah,
would it actually launch
it
that?
could eventually look great.
Yeah,
I think it was a bad idea to show it
I
off
do
in the
too.
state.
I do too. If I would have shown this game, if this would have been me, I wouldn't have shown this stuff. What I would have shown would be more like a story type cinematic. Give us the game world. Give us we know it's in that world, in that setting. What are what's the story? What's the narrative? I think people are usually okay with a more narrative cinematic type thing for RPGs than for other types of games, right?
Yeah,
Like, who gives a shit about the story of a shooter, right? But if you're going to say, look, this is set in that world, here's the stuff that's going on, that'll get people hyped, and it'll show you at least what you're getting, and tell them it's a first person hack and slasher. Is it that? I don't know. I feel weird saying that. That's what it looked like almost, but
I think there's some magic involved. We don't know.
yeah,
That could have been that for a gameplay trailer. It wasn't very
it wasn't
clear.
very gameplay. But
I think we really needed to show what was unique about the
Yeah.
setting too. Like we know from like I played like 20 hours of Pillars before I gave up on it. We know from playing Pillars that it isn't just your generic fantasy setting. And they should lead with that. They should show why this is unique, why I want to experience this world that is different from Skyrim, that is different from Dragon Age, that is different from The Witcher.
Well, because I think they're kind of in their phase right now where they're looking to be that kind of RPG. We can make this world something like, Elder Scrolls, right? And I think they can. I mean, I really do. But like, when Bethesda was like doing like Redguard, like the adventures of Redguard, trying to like figure out what Elder Scrolls even was,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I feel like Avowed is right now. And I don't want to harp too much on the graphics. I can overlook shitty graphics. I've done it before for a good RPG. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, like I play games on my Switch all the time, and some of them are
oh no,
they're like 3 gens behind now,
they
but
all look like shit. But
but they look like crap, but they're fun as hell.
yeah, I just think that if that it the problem I have isn't necessarily what they showed, or it's they chose to focus on that, and that felt like a mistake, right? When it doesn't look great, and you're saying, "Hey, doesn't this look great?" I'm like, "No, this doesn't.
No,
What
not
else
yet.
is there?" Yeah, I mean,
Maybe one day,
yeah.
but like this is a marketing thing. You got to put your best foot forward.
exactly.
Other games that I wanted to mention, they got Fable, which like I've never played the original Fable games. This looked really Kingdom Heartsy to me, and I actually don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, the thing I would say about Fable, right, is Fable is a good RPG that masters tone and atmosphere, right? It is very British humor, right? If you haven't played one before,
That's why they had Richard Ayoade in the
as
trailer.
soon as he started talking, I'm like, oh, here comes Fable. Because it's more of an aesthetic that they're going for, right? Kind of like the absurdity of being a hero. In a kingdom full of armies and kings, and the fact that we got to rely on one guy to do all this is kind of a joke, right? And it's got a lot of other RPG things in there, but and then the morality system is, hey, the stuff that heroes do maybe isn't necessarily great, right? Like you're killing bandits, but you're not solving the problem of why bandits exist in the first place, right? So Fable 3 kind of touched on that, but I think Fable is a legit series to get excited about because there's something unique about how it takes on a lot of like, the well-worn RPG tropes that isn't just all tongue-in-cheek, because it definitely deals in a lot of them, it's not like Bard's Tale or something like that where everything's just for a laugh. But I really, really, really enjoyed my time every time with Fable, except for maybe 3. But I think that was just more growing long in the tooth and kind of not really knowing where they wanted to go with that particular installment. But Fable coming back is good news for Microsoft. I really think so. It's that kind of like weird off-kilter tentpole I would think that they wanted Rare to fill.
Yeah.
And
But Rare's kind of off doing their own thing
yeah, and
with Everwild or
this
whatever.
has been an interesting like couple months for Microsoft because it's kind of looks like they're a victim of being so hands off. And this was a thing that like when Microsoft was buying studios left and right, they're like, oh, Microsoft's going to run these guys into the ground, or they're going to make them make, a Perfect Dark every 6 months. And it seems like from what we've been hearing about Redfall, Microsoft's like, nah, do your thing. We trust you. Get it out the door when it's ready, stuff like that. And Redfall was the first time they really got burned by it, to the point where like, they were like, get this thing out the door. It's not getting any better,
Yeah.
to the point where the studio was basically like, we don't want to release this. And they were like, too bad,
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
Got to take your lumps, man.
I think, everybody's going to look at it different ways, but I think that, hey, Arcane, you're not, I mean, even BioWare doesn't have BioWare magic. Why would you think, there's such a thing as Arcane magic where the game's not ready? And they made the game they wanted to make. That was not at all Microsoft telling them to make some vampire shooter,
Yeah, so what I've read was that it was a mandate from Bethesda to try to create something that could be monetized as a live service. And so they decided to make this kind of multiplayer immersive sim to appease the Bethesda overlords. But then Microsoft bought Bethesda, and that mandate went away.
Right.
But they were left with this game that no one really wanted to work on. In fact, Arcane ended up losing a lot of its workforce over this game that no one wanted to work on.
Yeah, it ended up being a gigantic flop. So weird,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and like people were hoping that Microsoft would in the process of buying Bethesda rescue the studio and essentially just cancel the game and let them work on what they wanted to work on.
So, but the vibe or at least what I was reading about, it sounds like that's what they wanted, but like the higher ups were still telling Microsoft, yeah, this thing's going to be good. This thing's still going to be, we're going to get it out the door. It's going to be ready and all this other stuff. And it seems like that was at the level where there was the big, miscommunication was.
Yeah,
this was
I
never
think
going to be good.
My speculation is that once you got managers who have kind of staked their reputation on getting this game out the door, like, this is what we promised to you. They don't want to like jeopardize their jobs by like getting something they've shepherded immediately canceled.
Yeah.
So they're probably, just trying to cover their own butt, and then, well, it ended up biting them in the butt. So.
It really did. In a weird way too, because I think everybody's always thought the problem with publishers is they are merciless. They don't care about the quality. They don't care about the art. They all that kind of stuff. And this was the first time I can remember where it was like, damn, we really wish someone would have come in and canceled our game. Like, that's a really weird take to have. I just never would have expected that to be the story of this game. Was we knew it was bad. We didn't care. We were still going to make it. We were begging for it to not to be made, but everybody who was above us was lying and saying this was eventually going to be something cool, and it was never going to be. So yeah, weird way to come about that. And then I think what's come out since is, okay, well, now Microsoft's having to take a little bit harder stance on some of these games, but everything they announced, I think, really felt like the kind of game that studio wanted to make still. There was nothing in there where I felt like this was Microsoft saying, get us a Clockwork Revolution game or something, So I think that's still good. We'll see how it comes out. But Fable, I'm pumped for. Avowed, we'll wait and see.
I'm very curious to learn more about Compulsion's new game, South of Midnight, which is apparently like a wide linear action adventure game set in the Louisiana Bayou.
Yeah, that animation was gorgeous. I loved that look. I don't know how it's going to play, right? Because sometimes that kind of stop motion-y look in a game feels like glitchy lag or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But man, that was a cool looking trailer. I like that world. It feels fresh. I don't think I've ever played a Bayou Monster Hunter before. I was getting like a little Witcher vibe from it. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to talk to monsters about killing other monsters.
Yeah, we know it's not an RPG, but it might have some of those elements.
Like an actioner, yeah.
Yeah. I love that kind of bayou vibe.
Yeah.
I really dug Norco, and this is obviously not going to be as dark as Norco, but I'm kind of eager to return to a setting like that. So we'll see how the game actually plays when they show us some gameplay footage, but I'm very intrigued by the concept.
All right,
And
now
I'm happy to know what Compulsion was working on. A couple of other things before we move on to
elephant in the
Ubisoft.
oh, okay.
Sorry?
I was
Oh, I
gonna say,
killed your
there's a little-
segue.
There's a little game that we haven't mentioned yet. Kind of was at the end of that presentation.
Oh, yeah. So I completely forgot. I actually did want to talk about that. But before we get to that other game, a few games that I wanted to mention that were shown off here. There was a lot of stuff from Atlas.
Yeah.
So they got Persona 3 Reload. Doesn't really do anything for me. I just want Persona 6. I don't need a Persona 3 remake. Persona 5 Tactica. I'm kind of full up on Persona 5. And I don't really like the chibi art style they've got going on here. But Metaphor Refantasio. Now, this is my jam.
That name, come on.
Oh, that name is stupid as hell. But that game looked super stylish. I'm really intrigued by the concept of like a stylish acid jazz anime take on like dark fantasy. Let's make it happen. Like Persona, medieval Persona, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
The other one I wanted to talk about was Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess.
This game looked cool.
Yeah.
I was like, I know it's not just Microsoft or whatever, but this game kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, this feels old school a little bit. Very cool. The action looks so stylish.
It looks like a PS3 era game, like brought 2 generations into the future, which I am super down for.
Yeah.
What I've read is that is a mixture of action and strategy combat. So maybe this is like a second kick of the can for a Brutal Legend style game.
Maybe,
I don't know.
Yeah. Like a top-down kind of controlling your forces.
Yeah. So the mix, like, maybe like Disintegration, but with melee combat and not awful.
Yeah. But God, was it gorgeous, man! The fighting looked so fucking cool, you know. This one I thought looked really fun.
I'm hoping for good things from this. Capcom's been on kind of a roll lately.
I think, you know what's
terrible showcases.
Oh yeah. I think in a weird way, what kind of unlocked Capcom was kind of like Resident Evil, like reinvigoration almost.
Resident Evil 7 like lit a fire under
Yeah,
them.
like could it be possible that like an engine is like enough to get a studio to be like, oh, we can make games again? I don't know. I mean, like, but it just seems like ever since that,
that RE Engine magic is like driving them.
I feel like it. I think they saw it, had an idea, and I mean, some of these things that are coming out just look very cool with it. And good for Capcom. And like I said earlier, you know, this one, this trailer started, I was like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? And it, like, by the end, I was like, what the fuck is this game? You know, Googling it up. It looked really cool. And it looks like you're kind of like playing, maybe like alternating between like the ninja guy and like the shrine maiden, maybe. It's hard for me to figure it out.
We'll find out more eventually, but I definitely have my eye on this.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I have my eye on, which might be my game of the show, but just because I'm a dumb hipster, Dungeons of Hinterberg.
Yeah.
That like cel-shaded action RPG with puzzle dungeons. This is very much my thing. I love the color palette, love the art style, love that kind of melee action combat, love going to dungeons and solving like spatial puzzles. This is my thing. This is my jam.
At the beginning,
really want to see more of this.
I thought it was like a lo-fi beats to study to like game. I was like, oh, they made a game of her. That's cool. And then like there's like a sword in the background. Like, oh, okay, never mind. But that's exactly
okay. This is a real game
from it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, kind of like a lo-fi, kind of, you know, got an interesting look to it. That 2D, it's like cell shaded, but not really. And then they've got the backgrounds that have like the depth to it. It looked cool
with like the real pops of color. It's super colorful. Love that. This looks like if they made a Zelda game and featured it at the Wholesome Direct. That's what it would look like. Yeah, but I'm super down for it. Any other highlights from the
Yeah, a
show?
little thing called Starfield.
Oh yeah,
um,
we should talk about that game.
God, all right.
I gotta say, like, I am not a Bethesda games fan. I hate Oblivion. Absolutely think it's one of the worst games I've ever played. Played a bit of Fallout 3, didn't really care for it. I think this presentation won me over.
No,
Like,
I'm
I
all in. And
I was a huge skeptic
I,
going in, and like, I'll just preface this by saying there are a few things I think I'm still not on board with. I don't like that the protagonist isn't voiced. I think the combat is a little generic, but beyond that, I think I'm fully sold on this.
it was so I'm the opposite. I'm all in on Bethesda. I always have been. Like I've said, I excuse their bugs because of their scope. Straight up, I do.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I think it's one thing to have a ton of bugs in Redfall, right? But it's something different to me when you have a ton of bugs in Skyrim that's trying to have, background processes where a game's civil war is resolving over, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
yeah,
when you're ambitious, I can forgive things. And Bethesda is nothing but ambitious, right? Um, God, but this game, I was all, what sold it for me was when they got to the part about customizing your ship. Because you could, like, that whole presentation, like, layered thing on top of thing on top of thing on top of thing, and then you're like, oh my god, there's an RPG underneath all of this stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
we're talking about, like, really granular exploration stuff, but yeah, but there's still a story, there's still a crew, there's still like, and it just kept giving you each little slice of the pie, and you're like, damn, I'm full, I'm ready, let's eat this fucking pizza. The ship was what sold me, though, when they said this is the kind of thing, like, you think about, and then they thought about it, and that's what sold me on it. It said when you customize your ship, it doesn't just change the exterior, it changes the interior, how you get from the cockpit to the crafting spot. It's not just a static house type thing, right?
Yeah, you're actually like restructuring that
Yeah,
space.
and each part of it has a cosmetic and an actual, like, purpose to it. Hey, this thing lets you have more crew and it makes your ship bigger, but you can't jump as far or something. All that kind of shit is why I play Elite Dangerous. All that exploration is why I play No Man's Sky. The shooting's not great. I mean, I didn't expect it to be. I wonder why they don't have VATS. I was thinking about that, but or at least I don't think they showed that.
What I will say about the combat is that they showed most of it. What they showed off was really generic, but then they hinted at some other options, like essentially, effectively magic
Yeah,
powers, and then they hinted at one thing they showed off was like using the environment in combat, which I
yeah.
wish they showed
The
more
guy
of.
was, like,
Like
flying backwards while he was shooting.
there's that, yeah. There's like incorporating gravity and momentum into combat in like zero G. Then there was like shooting a refrigerator next to
Yeah,
someone to freeze them, which
yeah.
I thought
Jump
was
patters
hilarious.
and stuff. Man, they
I'm like, that's not how refrigerators work, but I don't
yeah.
care because it's a video game.
But then, but you know what I mean? When you're layering all this on top of, and you go, oh fuck, this is a Bethesda RPG like Skyrim behind all of this shit, right? You've got Elite, you've got No Man's Sky, you've got all these exploration games, you've got all these shooting games, and then underneath that, you've got that whole other layer. Man, it is. I was blown away. I didn't expect it to be this good, and I get it. I trust me. I wonder, a lot of people seem to have this really negative experience with Bethesda games, and I would say
Yeah,
that,
I'm one of them.
yeah, I would say that, like, I played Skyrim start to finish, don't remember any, like, game-breaking huge bugs, right? Fallout 3 and 4 pretty much the same, and then I remember Oblivion being buggy as shit. So I mean, I know a lot of the
Oblivion
narrative.
is so broken
Yeah,
that every single side quest I attempted in that game broke.
yeah, and, like, you kill the wrong guy and you wouldn't know it, but the game was broken. You know what I mean? Stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I
The game literally pointed me to a location on the map that didn't exist. Like
yeah, probably that.
I got 6 hours in. I was just like, I can't
If you
deal
kill
with
somebody,
this
it might have been
anymore.
the cleanup cell. You know about the horror of the cleanup cell?
I did not know. I did not know
Google
about that.
that when you got time. Yeah, I think every Bethesda game they call it the cleanup cell. Whenever you kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
They have to remove the NPC from the game world. So there's an actual location. When you kill somebody, they go to the cleanup cell and they're, like, just naked wandering around this room, like, very, like, like, just, like, horror type thing of, this person you killed, you can go visit the cleanup cell.
I feel like
the
you
people,
turn off clipping and then
yeah,
you
yeah,
can
it's
end
like a
up.
location. Um, yeah, I think all of them have one, but yeah, it's a pretty funny place to go to. I think it's called,
They should like incorporate that into the game in Starfield. Like you clip into some prison somewhere
yeah.
on the planets.
Here's all the
It's just a
people
bunch
you
of naked
killed.
people you killed.
But yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna stay positive for this one. This is like when we were talking about being positive for games. This is the example of why not. It doesn't hurt me. I got Game Pass. I'm getting it anyway. You know what I mean? Um, this is it felt like delivering on a lot of the promises that they've made for so long, even if it comes out buggy, even if it needs mods to fix. The scope of this one, I am gonna ride or die with this one until I've milked every sweet exploration juice out of all the 1,000 procedurally generated planets. I'm expecting those planets to be kind of ho hum, honestly.
Yeah,
You're gonna get to
I
them, and
think
there's gonna be one or
the
two
authored
things.
content is going to be where this game
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really shines.
That city they showed, holy shit, biggest city they've ever made in any game by like magnitudes of size. And I mean, there is a lot going on in this game. You can tell that, like I said, like every little feature, there was another layer of, oh shit, they thought of that. When they said you could board enemy ships rather than just blow them up in space combat, I'm like, damn, I could be a space pirate. Little things like that are what makes good RPGs great, right? Sure, here's space combat. It's really just kind of like clicking a button. It's pretty Galaga. Nope, not this one. Go in there and steal their sandwiches if you want. Like, you can hail them and talk about news. You can get quests from them. Man, I'm in. I mean, I didn't see much that talked me out of the game. That's for sure. Uh, so
Yeah, what I think really appealed to me about Starfield, which I think some of the other demos that we'll get into with Ubisoft failed to do, was that this game convinced me that there was like a relationship between the player and the physical space they were inhabiting. Like you travel through this world, you overcome obstacles in this world, you explore this world. It was very intent on selling the audience on the relationship between the player and the world,
yeah,
which is something that I think is so key to making a good RPG. It's not just about how you kill enemies or how conversations work or like sweet talking your way out of a hairy situation. It's about how I exist in that world.
yeah.
And that's what this demo did such a great job of selling me
Even
on.
down to the exploration. You know what I mean? It looks
Yeah.
like even that was kind of like thought of as like, okay, there's a layer to this where you can just go look at that rock if you want, or you can go pick that rock up and study it and all this other stuff, or it might be part of a quest that you need, and this rock is going to be the thing that makes the difference. That's cool to me. I like that. I like that kind of shit. It's what keeps me in and RPGs. It's what keeps me going from spot to spot to spot, rather than just like, okay, let's get on with the main story. I could see myself playing this game and not touching the main story for hours. You know what I mean? Just I'm not going to even go to the first mission until I've got a ship that I love. Stuff like that is, if it's going to let me do it. I mean, think about how Skyrim plays. You could not touch that main quest once
I've
you get out of
never
that
played
prison
Skyrim.
for years. Like you know.
I'll say I know, even though I've never played Skyrim.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Oh,
sure,
yeah.
sure. Let's say I know.
I think Oblivion even lets you. Like, I think if you just don't go to that first farm, you're not on the critical path. Pretty much, you can just keep living your life.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want once you get out of that first dungeon. You just kind of go everywhere, and then, like, I think the problem is if you try to go anywhere but the first location, it just crashes.
The
'cause it's
interesting
full of bugs.
challenge, I think, for game reviewers and journalism when this game come out is going to be, I think people, I don't want to say necessarily want it to fail, but I think they want it to be like, look at this bug, of course, you know what I mean? And it's going to have to be balancing that with everything else this game has going on. You know what I mean? Are there going to be bugs? 100%. This game is way too fucking big not have bugs, right? But, is it delete your save bug, or is it this guy has a goofy tooth bug,
I don't think I think game reviewers actually tend to be a little more generous to bugs than like outrage YouTubers,
Yeah,
people on Twitter.
yeah.
So I'm not worried about how this game is going to review.
Oh yeah, I think it's gonna be a 90s whatever all across the board. Yeah.
What I think might be a little concerning is that kind of like, people go all cinema sins on a video
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
I think it's going to be a little prone to that.
I agree. That weird bug where the head twists all the way around, or like the character sits funny, or it's gonna happen. I mean, I'm just kind of
Whatever, I see a little bit of that, long as it doesn't break my game, I don't
yeah,
care.
same.
But I'm pretty generous about that stuff. Like, the way I see this is if they deliver on all the promise of the stuff that I did like, and maybe just the combat sucks, this is like an 8 out of 10 for me,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah.
And I think I'll enjoy it. If they actually nail the combat as well, I think this has a good shot of potentially being my game of the year.
Even
We'll
if
see.
they don't, the mods. Oh my god, the mods! Can you? I cannot wait to see what they do with this game. I I told everybody who listened, my dream game is to be a dropship pilot, right? I don't want to fight. I don't want a gun. I don't want nothing. I want to pick people up, take them to the battle, right? I want them to bid for my services. I'm the hottest dropship pilot around, and I'll dust you off or whatever else the cool phrases are, right? This game is gonna let me do that. I believe. If I have to pay someone to mod it for me, there's just so many potential things to do with a space game where every other space game has not delivered on the full promise, right? I love Elite. Love it, love it, love it, right? It's got no story. It's got nothing going on. You're just kind of, putting points into shields and clicking buttons or space
Yeah.
trucking goods across the
Pure
galaxy.
exploration
Yeah.
and
Ships feel
like
good to fly.
commodity movement.
That's about it. Star Citizen, okay, well, you've got that, but you've got a little layer of people, but it's the most empty feeling world ever. That single player is never going to come out with like Mark Hamill and all those other, it's never going to come out. Eve, well, hey, the online entry alone, there's always been the promise of a good space RPG that's never really 100% been met. Mass Effect, yes, but this is looking for
Mass
something
Effect is going for a very different thing than I think
this
this game
is
is.
not at all like in that world, but I can't wait. I think once this game hits and you get a year with mods, I think you're going to be playing, the Star Wars game everybody wanted to play in a lot of ways. So let's see what happens with it.
And we will talk about that Star Wars game, but we'll do so after a short break. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed all the Squarespace ads and use our promo code to start your new website.
Hello Fresh.
Exactly. Get your free 5 meals with promo code avocado. We're going to get sued.
One day. Yeah, we're fake advertising.
We're going to get super sued. But that's all right. We will pay it off with all the shilling we're going to do for PC Gamer and the PC Gaming Show. Hosted by Sean Day9 Plot and Frankie Ward as an AI version of herself, played by herself. So not really AI Frankie Ward. I have trouble keeping track of the lore of PC gaming shows. They had Loaderbot. Loaderbot sucked, but it was simple. I understood Loaderbot. I do not understand what's going on anymore.
I think tying PC gaming show to PC gamer also feels a little weird. I'm just gonna put that out. You know what I mean? Like it's a little, the official magazine of the official stream for PC gaming is kind of whatever, But yeah, sure, I get it. I understand why this exists, but with so many games coming to PC now, it just feels a little bit, like, hey,
redundant.
All that shit you saw, yeah, it's coming here too, but also here's some stuff that's only coming here, which is becoming less and less, to be honest with you, But
Yeah,
I'm not.
all the like smaller games also come to Switch. A
Yeah,
lot of strategy games are being ported to
yeah.
Xbox.
The indie games
Uh,
hit everything, you know. So yeah. I think the only one that I really walked away from that I really want to talk about was finally getting to see a little bit more of Stormgate. Um,
oh yeah, the RTS by a former Blizzard dev, right?
yes. So this this looks interesting. This looks like they just like wrote Warcraft 3 on one hand and wrote Starcraft 2 on the other, just kind of smashed them.
They like smashed the
Yeah,
two hands. They made the hands kiss.
I dig the art style. I think it's okay to try to have a really kind of like specific to your game art style for RTSs. It's a little too Blizzard for me, like, which sounds weird, right? But
Oh, it's straight up like the Warcraft 3 reforged
yes,
art style.
there was a couple screenshots that they showed, and I was like, this looks like a mod from StarCraft. But hey, whatever, you know. Um, if they're the developers from there, maybe that's just kind of what they're comfortable with. But really, really cool looking battles. Just little twists to the RTS formula, like having small units be able to go through woods and large units not be able to, right? I thought that was a
Yeah.
very neat little, attack through the woods with your infantry, then pull back into, artillery defending and stuff like that. And the battles felt cool in the way that they kind of ebbed and flowed. A lot of Warcraft 3 was super micromanagement, right? You only had 12, 13 units. You losing one would be, the end of basically the whole battle. Whereas, StarCraft was I right click and just, for the best sometimes. But um, I liked what I saw. I think, hey, I love RTSs. So um, I hope eventually that there's more competition in the space, but this looks like something which is we haven't really had. We've had a lot of spiritual successors to Command and Conquer, a lot of spiritual successors to other things, but this one feels like the first one I can really think of that takes the two of Warcraft and Starcraft and just says this is something very familiar, but we're doing something a little bit cool with it. So that was the one from the PC gaming show I really walked away from being like, yeah, this looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm not like super into RTSs. I should say I'm into them at all because I haven't played them since I was a teenager. It's a genre that I'm trying to get back into. So next time I think this is multiplayer only, right? They haven't like advertised a campaign for
I
this at
don't
all.
think so. I would be surprised if there wasn't, only because like their initial announcement seemed like it had like, remember it was like the mech fighting a demon.
Yeah,
I feel like there's going to be something there. I wouldn't be surprised there. But this was the second RTS that was announced after the Warhammer one. So maybe this is kind of the thing that PC gaming shows about a little bit is, hey, these are going to be, kind of. I think interestingly, the Warhammer one is done by Frontier, which
is that Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin?
that's it.
Is that
Yep, that's an
yeah?
actual RTS too. And I trying to think of the last Warhammer RTS I played might have been on like Xbox. Um, you know that wasn't. I'm talking about Warhammer, not 40K. So that one usually doesn't get as much love as the 40K world does when it comes to the RTSs. So, but another fucking Warhammer.
So many.
it's, it's unbelievable, really. But yeah.
There were two games that to me stood out. Sulfur looked like
Yeah.
uh, almost like an immersive sim, but with more of like a hand drawn kind of or like indie game kind of aesthetic. But I could be down for that. And the other one that kind of jumped out to me was The Invincible, which was announced a long time ago, but it was really good to see more of that game. It's that narrative adventure based on the sci-fi works of Polish author Stanisław Lem. So
I love hearing when there's a basis to some of those types of things. I think it always leads to a better game, when you have something like that. So, I'm interested. It
Yeah.
looks cool. A lot of those PC games, you only got the quick look because of how the conference was kind of set up. But yeah,
Yeah, it's. I don't think it would have been sold on what I saw if I hadn't saw previous footage from
yeah,
other
yeah.
conferences and
There was
trailers.
a lot of that at the PC gaming show, kind of bouncing forth to other announcements or other shows to kind of get a little bit more, or hey, sign up for this, or go to our Discord, or do that kind of stuff, just to get a little bit more info on the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they. I don't think the PC gaming show is good at like having those almost tentpole reveals. It's just a lot of like double A games, one right after the other, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure a lot of these games will turn out great. It just doesn't give the right kind of ebb and flow to the show.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're getting just enough sometimes for it to be okay. Well, this is cool, but now I want to know more, and they've got to get you to a second. Would it never go to a second location with the hippie? Never go to a second
Yeah,
location at the PC
no,
Gamer show.
yeah,
Because if I'm
pretty
watching the
much.
show, I don't want to click off it to go look at something else, and that's not, you know what I mean? That's not smart. I think.
Yeah, I'm like sitting there typing, look at this after the show, look at this after the show. But I'm one of those weirdos who will sit there with the game open on, like the conference open on one monitor and like a notebook open on the other.
Yeah.
Like most people are not like mentally broken
Yeah,
sickos like
yeah,
me.
yeah. When you just gotta know more about every single thing that you see, because like, what if this is the next one? You know?
Yeah. Most people are going to be like, okay, cool, and then forget about whatever they
Yeah.
watch the next day.
10 minutes later.
Okay, the one thing that I want to talk about just really briefly before we move on, they're doing a Dickens Metroidvania.
Yeah. Okay. Now that one is really why are we? What is the point of this license? But yeah.
I mean, it's not even a license. It's like it's public
Yeah,
domain
same
at
as
this point because
Pinocchio,
from
I
the
guess.
1800s, right?
Ebenezer
but,
and
like-
the Invisible World. What?
Okay, sure. Apparently, Ebenezer Scrooge is the protagonist now.
I don't know, man. I like one. You never make a holiday focused game. I think that's just kind of a, you know what I mean. That's a bad idea in the first place, right? Um,
They're probably thinking it worked for Die
yeah,
Hard.
the one thing it ever worked for, right? I don't know. I mean, is there anything there? Or is it just supposed to be kind of silly? I don't know.
I have no idea
Yeah.
what tone this is going for.
Yeah.
I have zero interest in playing this. I'm just so happy it exists. I'm so happy I get to say the phrase Dickensian Metroidvania.
It looks good. I think it's got that hand-drawn look to it that I
Yeah.
thought was going to take over a lot of games and then never really did. Looks great. It's just kind of a
It
weird.
looks a lot like Forgotten Anne.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the Forgotten Anne devs are making a new game called Forgotlings, which I believe was announced at Guerrilla Collective before SGF, and we can get into that later. Moving on to the next conference on our list was Ubisoft. Before the break, we alluded to talking about Star Wars, and we are going to, because this conference was bookended by two games by Massive Entertainment. The first one being based on Avatar, and the one ending the show being based on Star
Yeah.
Wars.
One of these was my game of the show, and I'm not. And I don't think it's the one you think.
Do we share the same opinion, or are we going to
Avatar
disagree?
looked dope as hell. I don't.
Exactly.
Everybody's like, "Oh no, Avatar." I'm like, how will we still have this opinion? Like, I get the joke. Nobody knows who Jake Sully is. I loved Way of Water. I thought it was great. Then
I haven't even seen The Way of Water yet, and I still want to play this game.
I was like, this is exactly what people want from avatars, to explore that world, the verticality, the way that it felt like the planet was part of the fight against the bad guys. Everything about that game I thought was perfect. Even the shit they were saying, like they're like, yep, this is what we thought of, this is what we're doing. Fighting from the backs of the dragons as you're shooting down like Halo Hornets. I was like, man, this is damn near perfect. And everybody's shitting on it. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just out of touch. I'm just an old fucking man. I don't know, but I loved what I saw from that. Star Wars, I thought was kind of like a little bit like I would say a little more staid, kind of a little more.
Yeah, staid is the word I would
compared
use
to
for
Avatar, where they're like, fuck it, go all out. and it fits so well with the Far Cry capture an area, take it over. It's now our area. We're going to do what we want with it. The enemy's pushed out. You can get reinforcements. That is such a good fit with the Avatar world.
They finally managed to take that game structure and make it
Yeah,
anti-colonial.
yeah, and it really is now. I mean, holy shit.
Like, cool. They've managed to actually like marry that structure to the story they want to tell. Like, I don't think I'll get a lot of criticism for saying that Far Cry games have generally not had great writing.
Yeah, yeah.
I am
I would
eager to play a version of this with like a different kind of script.
Yeah, I think it's been inconsistent writing. Six had amazing writing for the villain, for Giancarlo Esposito's character, right? Um,
Oh, okay.
Five had,
I didn't play
yeah,
six.
five had very good writing for the cult members, right? But your character always is kind of just like generic badass thrust into role of being generic badass for a lot of different reasons, right?
Yeah.
Six fixed that a lot. Six came a long way narratively. I will say that. Five was the start of it, but five couldn't figure out how to tell the story without knocking you unconscious, which is one of my gaming pet peeves, right? Like, okay, story time. You're gonna walk in this door and this guy's gonna hit you in the head with the butt of his gun, and then we're gonna get 30 minutes of exposition story, right? Far Cry 5 could not avoid that, and it drove me nuts. Six went a long way in figuring out how to tell that story kind of compellingly. And God, Giancarlo Esposito does not miss, and he put a lot of, you know, the villains of Far Cry have always been almost the damn, the best part of them. So this one was definitely no exception. Um, but yeah, this one it just seems like such a natural fit. You're almost like, oh, of course, this makes so much sense. The action looked cool. The weapons look cool. The world looked cool. Shit, I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised by everything that they showed of that Avatar game.
Yeah, what really stuck out to me is that it felt like a game that actually took advantage of the fact that it's an open world
Yeah,
game.
yeah. Because that's the whole thing about Avatar, right? I mean, like in the movies, they're using the planet to fight technologically superior, but they're not as in tune with the Meiwa, I think is the name of it. I don't know, I gotta learn brush on my Navi before I start playing it. But the idea is that like, hey, you're on our turf, and we can use the jungles and the forest and the oceans to our advantage, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And it really felt like the game was selling that to you, which is genius. And then,
And even on top of that, it's selling the idea of exploring the
mm,
world, of kind of mastering the world, like learning to live. I shouldn't say mastering, because this is like a kind of an anti-colonial game. More like learning to live within the world
mm,
and deeply understand it. And I think that fits so well with an open world
yeah.
structure,
And Far
which
Cry's
is why
always dabbled in that. If you kind of think about the guts of it, it's been there, but they've never really figured out how to do it in a smart way, right? Like,
they've never been able to marry the narrative to the
yeah,
gameplay
like
in that
four is
regard.
like, oh, you're on this mystical island that you kind of come from, and there's this girl that if
I think that's three. Four's the one in the Himalayas.
three is the one where yeah, and so I think there's been a lot of that, like the idea behind it, but it's never married it to a reason, and I think now they finally done it, and this has a fucking ton of potential, I think. And I think there's gonna be, ho ho ho, I'm playing the Star Wars one, not the Avatar one, but man, I'm telling you, this one, this felt like it had some heat to me. As far as a
Yeah.
game, I get it. People don't like Avatar as much as Star Wars. I'm not stupid, but man, this one, I could see myself
Up to
definitely
me.
playing this a lot.
I was sold on this where before I was kind of on the
Mhm.
fence. I'm still not like super sold on the idea of running around with human guns as a Navi, but
Yeah,
whatever. I'll find a way to get used to that. What I'm really excited for is the idea of being able to approach combat situations a little more
yeah,
tactically. And that also fits together really well with the open world, like using the environment to your advantage in a way that feels like it belongs in the environment. It isn't just like, oh, we put a crate there that you can hide
yeah. Or
behind,
there's a
and the
red
level starts to
barrel.
feel like
What do you do with
the level
it?
starts to feel like over designed,
Yeah,
right? This feels a little more organic, and it feels like you get to approach encounters the way that someone in that situation realistically would approach encounters.
And that's what I was very impressed by the scenes where they were showing you fighting the helicopters on the backs of the dragon thing, bird lizards. Because it really felt like, how would you actually fight this thing? And shoot a giant.
That's what they did in the movie.
Yeah, and it looked cool then. It looks cool now. Shoot a giant arrow through a helicopter is cool looking shit, and no reason to change what already works. So, I was, like I said,
I am fine shooting down like the purple glowing spot in a helicopter as long as you get to do it from the back of a dragon. So that's a lesson for you, Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Then that's why, like you said, it bookended two different ways, and I thought, in contrast, Star Wars looked a little dull. Looked like I wasn't getting it, unless I was missing something.
I can't tell if this was an incomplete showing of or like a not very well-rounded showing of a game that has a lot more going on, or whether this was the best of. I can't tell which one. If it's the former, this could be a really good game. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like, I want to stress that I don't have enough information to say this is going to be bad. But if this is the best of what this game has to offer, and it is the full gamut of what this game has to offer, then this is not going to be a game that will be worth my time. Yeah. And, like, I do want to explain where I'm coming from here. I am not convinced that this game needs to take place in an open world.
Yeah.
What made the demo, like, the moment that was so ridiculous in the demo to me was when, the hero, Kay Vess, drives that land speeder for all of 20 seconds.
Yeah, he gets right out.
And she's right at the, like, settlement, away from the bad guy's lair. Why is that distance so short?
Yeah.
It makes the world feel ridiculous.
Let me ask you this. This is more like a general Star Wars question, but so, like, I feel like Star Wars kind of has two stories to tell, right? They have the Jedi story, and then, like, I want to say, like, the Han Solo story, right? The bounty hunter, the live by the seat of your pants type guy, right?
Yeah.
Is there a third story that you would really say would fit better with the Star Wars story than like the bounty hunter outlaw? Because you're never really trying to explain this. They always make you the good guy anyway. You're not really.
Yeah. Oh, that.
You know what I mean?
This is exactly the point I wanted to make. Like, Star Wars is very Manichaean in its ethics, right? It's very dark and light. Like, it literally has dark and light for good and for evil and good, right? It is very, very black and white. And so you have good guys and you have bad guys. In fact, the prequel trilogy was an attempt to add some moral complexity, and everyone roundly rejected it. So, like, what we have in modern Star Wars is this very black and white, very good and evil framework. And you can't have these kind of scoundrel-type characters like Han Solo, like Lando Calrissian, but they're ultimately scoundrels with hearts of gold.
Exactly.
So you know that Kay Vess is going to be a scoundrel with a heart of gold.
And eventually you're working with the Republic to break the siege of Blurger, you know?
And, like, I have no problem with that, but, like, don't pretend you're going to sell me on anything else. Yeah. Or if you are going to, like, if you actually are going to sell me on something else, then, like, you really need to nail it. And I don't think the way this character is being portrayed is compatible with that.
But I guess what I was trying to get with that too is, like, that's why open world plus a kind of a fixed path never works for me, right? Like, you might as well just put me on the story that you want to tell me, you know, and then not have me drive from place to place to just eventually do what you're going to make me do anyway. I always feel like open world works best with kind of like a little bit like superior morality. If I show up in this village and decide everybody in this village is going to get shot and I'm going to rob it blind, cool, you know? But if open world is literally just walking from quest to quest, to go do nice things because I'm a nice person doing nice things across the world. I mean, what's the point? I like the idea of an open world being messy because, the people in the town over might not know what I did over there, but it just works better to
It's
me.
not even going to be like doing. It's going to be doing nice things, but doing them reluctantly with a lot of grunting.
How many creds am I going to get for giving this box of orphan medicine?
Then you reach the end and you're just like, free of charge this time, and then
Next
you
time
go
those
away.
orphans die.
You're never gonna let those orphans die.
No,
like if you want to make me believe that the orphans are gonna die, you gotta kill a kid or two.
You drop a couple off a cliff. But yeah,
just like that penguin from Super Mario 64. Do that with a kid.
Just need that one. Just
we're getting canceled tomorrow. Just like those YouTubers.
Just need one good dead kid to really spice it up. Keep them guessing.
Yeah, pull a Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Make that the space child.
Get into the tunnels or whatever. I don't know. Like, yeah, sure. I just feel like I've heard the scoundrel story a million times, and like every game's kind of like, oh, you're gonna be in the shadows, and like, no, I'm not. I'm gonna have a team of Jedi tell me what to do and do all the dumb Jedi stuff that the Jedi always make you do, and there's no, I don't know.
I don't mind doing that. Just don't try to sell me on something you're not.
And then make me drive a speeder 40 feet to to get the mission to do it.
Yeah, it just seemed ridiculous. Yeah. The other thing that really bothered me about this demo, every interaction that Cave S, the protagonist, had with her world that she was inhabiting was about how she dealt with enemies.
Yeah.
Right? She was shooting, she was punching, she was distracting them, she was fleeing. Even that conversation she had eventually led to her fleeing. Yeah. Like, everything about this game was how do you deal with enemies? And that is just not, like, either that's all you can do in this game is, like, deal with people the way you deal with enemies. Like, have this antagonistic relationship. Like, the only meaningful relationship you can have with any other NPC is antagonistic.
Yeah.
Or they did not show off enough of this game to give an idea of what you actually do in it.
They went to the Han Shoots first school of Star Wars, right? I mean, like, you can't talk your way out of it anymore. It's got to be, the scoundrel always blasts his way out of the cantina, right? Which, how many times can you do that until you're just kind of bored with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would love for it to have showed, like, hey, here's a weird conversation where, I'm able to intimidate this guy into giving me a lot more money for this dangerous mission, but also, I tell him that if he goes back on it, I'm going to come back and shoot him, and then he does go back on it, and I go back, like that kind of like seedy underworld stuff that Star Wars flirts with but never really gets into. Do it. You got an open world, who cares if you're not blasting, Luke Skywalker. It's a bunch of nameless people.
Yeah. Either do it or don't pretend that you are, and just like make this the adventures of like scoundrel lady with a heart of gold run around the galaxy, and I would be cool with that. The other thing that I'll point out about this game, like getting back to why is this an open world, I think the idea of like seamlessly launching into space and with no load screens and then you're dogfighting is super technically impressive. I just think it contributes zero from a gameplay perspective. Like, I do not care if I have to sit through a 5-second loading screen after I press the button to launch my spaceship.
It's tough when you've got Starfield, 2 minutes, before this presentation, showing you the kind of cool stuff you can do in those scenarios,
And nothing that's cool about Starfield is predicated about a seamless transition from surface to space. It's all the cool stuff you can do in space and all the cool stuff you can do on the surface, but nothing, it's not about like, this is just technically showing off. Yeah. It doesn't really afford any gameplay advantages.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't say they didn't show us enough for me to be like, uh-oh, here comes the stinker. Like, I don't think that at all yet. No, I just think that, like you said, the stuff they did decide to show us was like a lot more me going, well, why is this, like you said, is this the good stuff? Because I'm not walking away thinking that usually. Like, when I was watching that, I was like, ooh, this looks a little rough. And it's a Star Wars game. You usually want to come out swinging because the hype is there.
Yeah, I like the gameplay did look a little
Mhm.
rough. Like the third person shooting looked really, really
Which
clunky at
studio
me.
is this? Is this Shanghai?
No, it's Ubisoft
Oh,
Massive. It's the same studios making
yeah.
Avatar.
My man. That's yeah.
Like, and this is the studio that made The
Yeah,
Division. You'd
I
think
was
they'd have
gonna say,
mastered third
yeah.
person shooting.
Yeah, they should know the shooting part pretty damn well.
So I assume that'll get like touched up before release. This game looks gorgeous. I think they've absolutely nailed the art direction. But
Yeah,
let's hope that
Division had
everything.
was similar. Yeah, so
What I'll say is, let's just hope that everything they said about the game in kind of like press interviews is actually what the game is all about, and it's not just fleeing enemy encampments that are 500 meters away from
they'll never see
like
me.
cities.
I'm on the scooters.
No one will ever discover I'm in
I'm
this
out of
city.
here. Yeah.
You'll never find me. Okay, a couple other things I wanted to mention about the Ubisoft show. Skull and Bones is still
Oh,
happening.
jeez, man. I feel like I talked about this more than I've said my wife's name at this point. Like this game, what is going on with it? Like, who's pushing for it? Um,
The Singaporean
yeah,
government.
apparently,
If
yeah.
they
You better
don't
get
release
that out.
it,
Yeah. Um,
yeah, they're getting kicked out of Singapore.
I don't know. Sure, maybe it's good. I don't have a feeling at all for what this game's actually going to be. They did announce the Halo crossover with Brawlhalla. Trying to think of what
Sounds
else
good to
they
me.
talked about. Oh, actually something I was really kind of pumped about. Well, not me so much, but that X Defiant game. I don't know if you followed it at all or anything. Um,
I have, I haven't followed it. I know it was at one point called Tom Clancy's X
yes,
Defiant,
and he's
but I
been
haven't
dead a
followed it
couple of
beyond that.
years, but uh, uh, very cool shooter. A lot of streamers got invites to it a couple months back, and that was basically what their announcement was streamers playing the game and being like, "Oh shit, actually, this is good." But shooting wise, it's a very competent shooter. I would love to know who's making that one too out of their studios. I guess I could look it up, but because it seems like there's a lot of Ubi studios who all of a sudden have nothing to do. So, but this one feels like it's going up against Call of Duty type game. So I really liked what I saw though. Oh, Ubisoft San Francisco. There you go.
I didn't even know they had a San
Wow,
Francisco studio.
wow, it's news to me. Yeah, founded in 2009 to make the South Park games. So there you go.
Oh, I didn't know it was that studio that did South Park. So,
But
okay, now we know where the fractured butthole came
yeah,
from.
as a shooter though, it's very well done. They I don't know how much this happens, but there's a lot of good shooter people within the Ubi ecosystem to kind of work it out. But the streamers that were playing it, I think were all very surprised about how good it felt. Almost like it's weird because we talk about like dad shooters like earlier in the podcast we were talking about that, but you're starting to get a little bit of original Call of Duty nostalgia, if that makes sense. There's kind of like fast jump in, jump out, type gameplays. Um,
Yeah,
and while Call of Duty is focusing on more of a battle royale thing, so this one feels like a throwback to early modern warfare days of Call of Duty. People were loving it. Everybody I saw who was playing it was actually really digging it. So that was the other one I wanted to mention. I think we already talked Prince of Persia. That was
yeah.
that was about the only other one I remember.
I 100% would not have expected X Defiant to be
No,
good.
no, that's what everybody was
Um,
like. What? Wait, this is actually good. Yeah. So good for them. I think Call of Duty needs a lot of pressure on it to kind of, you know, get a little bit better. I don't. I love shooters. I like playing them. I used to buy one every year, but with so much wind being taken out of those sales, I think you've kind of stagnated across the board. All of them, like I was talking about, are a little bit stagnant right now. So you put another player in the world and maybe get people to remember what they liked about Call of Duty, and it sure as shit wasn't weapon attachments. So see what happens there.
yeah, I'm not going to. I don't want to be like sitting in menus
Yeah,
modding guns.
exactly.
I want to be like fragging
Yeah,
noobs, or
yeah,
more likely getting fragged because I am a noob. Uh, like that's what I want to be doing, playing these games. Like get in, get out. I want like a good 20-minute session. I'm good.
And that's
Got my fill.
exactly what this game is like. Hey, jump in, capture a couple flags, run a couple, like those old style gameplay modes were kind of like, hold this area, do this, do that. So people were digging it, and I think it's going to be kind of a little surprise hit when it actually launches. So, but otherwise, Skull and Bones, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
What else did they show off? They showed off a little bit of the Crew Motor Fest, some Assassin's Creed stuff. They revealed a Blood Dragon animated series.
Yeah. That was an animated series? I thought it was a movie. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be on Netflix,
I
just like
remember the Netflix
Castlevania.
thing. The only thing that kind of hurts, and this is just me, I've really enjoyed the move to RPG of Assassin's Creed, and it feels like they're going against that again. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of portraying this one as like, a de-evolution of the series a little bit.
Like a return to form when it didn't really need to return to form.
The problem, I think, a lot of people. Okay, people loved Origin, people loved Odyssey, and from what I saw, people loved Valhalla, but it was just too much. It was like too much of a good thing at that point, right? Valhalla's like a 400-hour game at this point, right? But that's not necessarily, to me, a signal like you've got to go rework this whole damn thing, right? That's like...
Yeah, maybe like scope down slightly, clean up a little bit of the loose ends, and then, you've got a formula that works. Just tweak it.
And I really did not get the feeling coming off of Odyssey that people were burnt out on the new RPG thing. I just really didn't, But I think... I want to say like a completionist run of Valhalla. You probably would check this. I think it's literally like 200 hours. I'm not 100% on that, but like that plus the DLCs, and a lot of the DLC is free, so you basically get it for free. But it is a lot of game, and I don't.
How long to beat has it pegged at 142 hours?
So I'm not making that up, right? That's a lot of game. And I can see people being like, I don't want to play Assassin's Creed for 140 hours. Sure, but they're not making you. And it's a little bit more of that, hey, this is too much of a good thing. And I think they were reading that of people are tired of the RPG formula. I don't know that I am. So I don't know.
I think this was probably put into development before like any reception to Valhalla had come in. Like this probably on like a 4 or 5 year dev cycle because that's how AAA games are made now. You just have to hope that they're also doing the big Assassin's Creed alongside this more pared back one. So they might be doing this just to kind of keep Assassin's Creed in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
So every couple of years they'll have the smaller one, and then the next 2 years later they'll have the bigger one, and they'll kind of alternate that way. I think that might.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. More, I was just kind of concerned with the way they were talking about the series. I was like, whoa, what do you mean? We need to return to form and like all this other stuff. I was like, it's been pretty fucking good.
I think that's kind of like bad marketing.
Yeah. Like somebody in marketing was like, shit on the current one to sell the new one. It's like, no, we can have.
Because they always want to make you think that what you're currently enjoying sucks, and you need the new shiny thing.
I don't. I like.
And like, that's not how I approach video games. I'm not like, give me something new to replace something I hate. I'm more like, give me more of what I like, or give me something new that I could get really into.
When what I like is. I mean, fuck, the RPG Assassin's Creed still feels new to me. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of ways, right? So I don't think it's a bad idea to basically, give you some items and levels and make it so you can't just stab everything in the back as you go through the game, right? I don't think that's a bad thing. So I don't know. Is there a balancing act? Sure. I guess some people just really, really hated it, but there's a balancing act. But I really hope they just don't go back to the drawing board, which I don't get the impression they were. But it was more about how they were talking about it. I was like, what the fuck? What are we doing here, guys? I guess we'll find out.
I think the project they have for like their next big RPG one, I think that's the feudal Japan Assassin's Creed.
So, yeah.
I haven't really kept up with Assassin's Creed news and rumors. I don't know what's been leaked, what's actually been announced. I stopped at Brotherhood. I haven't played beyond that, so I can't really speak to what like RPG Assassin's Creed is. But I think the strategy is going to be alternating.
It does look beautiful. I mean, they've released a couple of screenshots of what Baghdad looks like and everything, and it's very cool. There's a lot going on in the the background of that game. It doesn't look like a half game like some of their games sometimes look like, you know?
Like
Yeah,
Rogue,
exactly.
maybe.
Yeah. Where you're like, okay, well, you know, it's basically this, but we're just getting a mid game out there. So this might be something. Like I said, they're toying with the Phoenix stuff. I think they're toying with what the mid Assassin's Creed games look like. They've done platformers, they've done Rogue. This kind of feels like somewhere in that Rogue area to me. But I'll give them a little bit of leeway. That was just I was just like, wait, this when we're sitting here talking about return to form and back to the origins and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, I hope this is just this game and not the whole series goes back to just
Yeah.
Hitman style assassinations. But I thought they had a pretty strong show, honestly, and I think it's smart of them because they're really the only third party who played their own show, kind of. And it's always gonna be a little cringy. They're always gonna have the just dance shit and stuff. But
Oh, that was really badly
it's an
shot.
esport.
Like the choreography of the dance was good, but whoever was working the
It was, like, right in
camera
their
or
face.
choosing the shots, it was a really bad
Yeah.
showing. I think it might have been the constraints of where they were filming. It was a much smaller theater than they usually film in, so they probably couldn't get the right camera angles.
Okay.
But they probably should have known that going
Yeah,
in.
I was gonna.
Like you would rehearse
The
this,
angle they
and
were
you
at was like up nose shot. It's great.
yeah, it was like from below and close
Yeah.
up. So it's like let's look at the dancer's nostrils.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, okay, here we go. They just stand stuff out the gate, and I guess the big announcement was that it's going to be an esport, Just Dance esport, which I mean isn't dancing.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Is it dancing already
Yeah,
a sport? Like, are there other dance competitions?
Strictly ballroom. I watched that shit with my wife. So yeah, whatever. I thought Ubi. I'm not gonna say knocked it out of the park, but they hit a lot of bases that I was surprised by, and I didn't expect to be going out of that show being like, I'm buying Avatar, 100%. So I don't see him pre-order now. That shit looked great to me.
Yeah, Avatar was the game of this show
Yeah,
for me.
same.
I'm super down to play it when it comes out in December. Moving on to other conferences, and we can just kind of rapid fire
Sure.
these because I watched some of these, not all of them. I watched Guerrilla Collective, which was the day before SGF Kickoff. You didn't watch that, right?
Absolutely not.
No, this was bad. Not in terms of the games they showed, but the hosts were extremely awkward. I think they were filming in the same space that Kind of Funny films in, and I just don't think they were used to filming in that studio because it felt like they didn't know how to read off the teleprompter. They felt really out of sync, like they hadn't rehearsed anything. But the games they showed off there's some interesting ones. There was this game called Leximan that looked like I would describe as a cross between Undertale and Baba Is You. I don't know how you cross those games, but I think that's what this is doing. Then they got this game called A Bonnie Odyssey, which looked like a Scottish take on The Witness. And what also looked interesting was Demon School, which was just basically tactical Persona. It looked better than Persona 5 Tactica, so I'm down for that. Then the other showcase I wanted to talk about was Devolver.
Yeah.
We always talk about Devolver every year. I was actually cool with the joke this year, making fun of AI. I'm always down to make fun of AI hype because AI hype is extremely stupid.
I feel like my brain hurts whenever I talk about AI, because people are like, this shit is going to destroy the planet, and then I watch AI Joe Biden talk to AI Trump about Call of Duty, and I'm like, this?
This is what we're doing with the tech.
Maybe, I don't know. People keep telling me weird. I'm like, okay, I guess so. But I don't know. Like, yeah, make fun of it all you want. I don't know if I'm supposed to be scared, but sure.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. The only announcement that really popped here for me is Human Fall Flat 2.
Yeah.
I like the first Human Fall Flat. Played it a lot with my friends. I'm down to play more of that in a stupider way. I hope they keep in the extensive customization and Steam Workshop support.
Yeah.
Because the custom levels are really what make Human Fall Flat.
Yeah. I think the only one I remember seeing was Wizard with a Gun. That looked pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
that's when I definitely want to at least see someone play. But it looked kind of the graphics on it looked really really cool. And Devolver really has that like aesthetic that I think a lot of places don't have. But I had like an overworld that looked really cool. It reminded me of a game that I really liked that I don't know if anybody else played, but it's called Battle Chasers.
You've talked about
I
it on the
liked it a
podcast
lot,
before,
and like
so,
I think it's
yeah.
available on like everything now. But that's exactly what it reminded me of. So I'll definitely keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, so that was Devolver. Then there was Tribeca Game Spotlight, which I think was actually the best of the smaller shows. What they did was they just picked a selection of, I think it was 7 games. Yeah, 7 games. Just most of them previously announced, and just did deep dives on them for like an hour. And I think it worked really well. They sold me on games that I was really skeptical about. I was super skeptical of Goodbye Volcano High, and this is the best showing that game has received. Like the previous showing they did that game, I think was borderline disastrous, where they like threw the rhythm gameplay on people out of nowhere, and people were like, "Wait, I thought this was Life is Strange with dinosaurs. Now you're telling me this is a rhythm game? What the hell's going on?" And they did a much better job of explaining what this game actually is. They showed off this game called The Highland Song, which was this 2D platformer from Inkle, the same folks who made Overboard, Around the World in 80 Days, and whatchamacallit, Heaven's Vault. So I'm really excited for that. Chance of Sonar, which is a puzzle adventure, stealth action adventure, top down.
Was this announced, or was this?
This had been previously announced. It was in like one of those montages at Nintendo Direct.
Oh, okay. Is this voice controlled, or am I crazy? Or something like
not
that?
Not voice controlled. It's not voice controlled.
Okay.
It's like this top-down, vaguely Mobius-inspired, taking inspiration from Middle Eastern art.
Okay, that's what I remember.
Kind of
then, yeah.
setting. Looks really cool. I'm down to play these like puzzle adventure games. This one's based on understanding language. I really liked Heaven's Vault.
I remember the language thing. That's what I think I was remembering about it. Yeah, it had a really cool aesthetic, and it was like you slowly learn to read the language by like puzzling out certain things.
Yeah, and this is not like a new thing in games. Heaven's Vault famously did this. There was this other game, I believe it was called Sethian, that did it before Heaven's Vault. So it's part of that lineage, but they're also adding all these other gameplay elements on top. So I think that's going to be a really nice mixture. The other game I wanted to shout out was a game called Despelote, which is a first-person soccer adventure game, and it's got this really bold aesthetic, which is almost monochrome and dithered, but not like black and white, but like a single color, usually like a pink or a yellow or a blue. I think it looks really neat.
It's interesting how we're kind of like. It took a while to get there, but we're kind of getting out of that pixel art for everything and starting to be like, okay, there's an aesthetic that we can do on top of that's not just straight up pixel art. And I think a lot of these games are starting to look very cool for what they're doing with some of their art styles.
Yeah, I'm starting to see pixel art in indie games. It feels more like a deliberate choice when they choose to use it. Like they're trying to evoke something specific with using pixel art. Like, say, the upcoming Sea of Stars is trying to recall 16-bit RPGs. But games that didn't feel like they would benefit from pixel art are now kind of moving away from that. And I'm really excited because it feels like now art style is matching intent.
That's exactly what I would say too. Like, finally we were getting to a place where it's like, okay, let's figure out the art style for this game too, not just run with pixel art because that's what we can do. So that's really cool. I mean, that one game, Chant of Stenar, I'm interested in that one. That's as far as the ones you mentioned. I think that sounds really cool to me. Want to see where that one goes.
The one from this conference that I thought you would have been interested in was Telltale's take on The Expanse.
You the first part of that is where I said no. The second part is cool, but man.
I should have led with The Expanse and not with Telltale.
I've been following this for a while, but man, like, I don't know if anybody burnt through as much goodwill as they could as Telltale did. By the end, by episode 2, I was like, of Walking Dead, I was like, what the fuck is this? I was so annoyed by everything in that game. All the little decisions, like killing the woman that you just saved, and then just kind of like shitting all over the decision you made. And I'm sitting here agonizing, like, oh, do I want the computer guy or do I want the reporter? She seems to be a slick talker, and he seems like he's gonna know. None of it mattered. I can't do another game where I have to pretend my choices matter. And The Expanse is such a beloved world to me that's going to be really tough if it's like, having to choose between drummer and Christian, and actually it doesn't matter, or something like that. It just kind of break me. So
I will say, this, I believe Telltale
yeah,
is
it's not
just
Telltale,
publishing
yeah.
it. It's being developed by Deck Nine, who did Life is Strange Before the Storm and Life is Strange Two Colors, which are the two Life is Strange games that I haven't played, so I can't tell you how good they are. The Life is Strange games made by Don't Nod are really fantastic,
Right.
especially
Don't
Life is
not
Strange 2.
announced a pretty cool game too. I can't remember what it was now.
Jusant at the Xbox
That's
Game
it.
Showcase, which was the climbing
Yeah.
game, and Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden, I believe, at the Summer Game Fest kickoff. But we can put that link up to double check. Both of those look cool
I
to
like
me.
that climbing game. I thought that looked really, like, it was quirky and cute, but it was like the exact level of that type of game that I'd want to play. It looks like you're kind of like got a friend that let you climb higher and you kind of bounce around. I thought that was pretty cool.
I want a game with. I am very intrigued by the idea of a game with Uncharted style climbing, where the gameplay is not
Yeah,
pointless.
like this one, it was more exploration focused. Like it would show, like, oh, hey, look at that tower in the distance. Let's go check that out. I think that's a more natural style of a climber than like you have to get up here because there's an idol or something. So yeah, I thought that was really
Like
cool.
figuring out how to get someplace by climbing. It's almost like Death Stranding, but instead of walking,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
climbing.
you're just constantly looking for the yellow tinged ledge or whatever, right? But
Yeah, instead of that, it's an actual like environmental. I don't want to say environmental puzzle because that means a specific thing, but it's an actual thing you have to solve, just like Death Stranding, which I'm really excited
yeah, so
for.
I remember that one. But yeah, future game show. I don't know. Like,
Did you watch
no,
this?
I watched two announcements from it. Um, I don't know why Intel insists on this. It seems to overlap with PC gaming a lot. you know, Probably because most people are running on one of two CPUs at this point. I don't know what the point of this show is. This is the one that I think tomorrow it could get cut, and I wouldn't mind. But I think
They've never lived up to the high watermark set by the first iteration of
yeah,
this. Like the first feature game show was
yeah.
fantastic, and they've tried to recapture that magic every time. They always bring on prominent voice actors to host, and they've never been able to recapture the magic of the
Yeah,
first one.
I agree. And I think the reason is because at the time, what people were really excited for was the announcements. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that when you're not getting the announcements because there's 10 million things before you, it kind of puts the damper on the show because you're just kind of there to fill, the void for a little bit. And it was all right. I mean, I don't want to crap on it too much. I watched 3 in a row of announcements, and all of them were pretty good. They were well done, at least, you know. But I don't know. I've kind of gotten to the point where, like, with some of these shows, where it's like I know I don't have to sit through the whole show because they're not going to put a ton of effort into pulling you in anymore. It's just like announcement, announcement, announcement. So the two things I watched I thought were pretty cool. The Resistor, I think you put down that one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Uh, you know, that an action RPG where the car is the car the character, is that kind of what you took away from it?
What I read afterwards was that it was an action RPG replaced the combat with
Okay,
racing, essentially.
got it. That looked pretty cool. I think the idea of, like, tinkering and all that stuff, I thought that was a pretty cool, and it looked very fun in gameplay as you were watching it. So I thought that one was pretty cool. The other one I watched, I couldn't really figure out. One of my friends told me, "Hey, this looks like something you'd be into." Um, was Deceit 2. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Is it like a horror Among Us kind of? Um,
I don't know because I don't remember this. It is a social deduction horror
yeah,
game.
it's like an Among Us,
So
I
yeah,
think, but like instead of being like, aha, it's very like it's like a Saw type game. My friend knows I like horror movies, so I think that's why he said you'd be into this. And I looked at it, I watched the trailer. I really didn't walk. I don't know what Deceit 1 was. So I watched the trailer and it looked kind of cool. Very dark setting. And the vibe I was getting from it was like, a little Among Us-y, basically.
it looks like Devour if the main monster were player
Yeah.
controlled.
Yeah. So this was one I was kind of keeping an eye out. It didn't look like exactly like a Dead by Daylight, which is what I thought at first, but there's something to it where, there's social deception makes me think of one thing, and that's Among Us. But um, I think you can do a little bit with that scare. Maybe kind of like a werewolf twist,
Yeah,
where
yeah, that's probably more like. I take back what I said about Devour. It's not like that at all. It is more like a werewolf style deduction kind of thing. So yeah, Among Us horror with realistic models instead of Amoguses is uh, probably what this thing is trying to do. Set to come out this year,
yeah.
so we'll see how that turns out. A couple of games I wanted to mention from Feature Game Show myself were On Guard. That swashbuckling action adventure sword fighting game looked pretty neat. The one that really popped out to me was Ruffy and the Riverside, which was this 3D platformer with this like swapping puzzle mechanic, and the character models were like flat, almost like Paper Mario style flat, which I thought was really neat. So I am super down to do that. The other thing that I saw, which was previously announced, was High Water.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was supposed to be a tactics
Yeah.
game. I also
I didn't either.
I thought it was like a top-down narrative
Okay.
adventure. Nope, it's a tactics game. Which okay, cool. I'm down for that. I also didn't know that it was already out on Netflix. Netflix is super awful at advertising its games.
Netflix is bizarre. I mean, even like just trying to look at a movie. My wife's been really into Shadow and Bone, the series, and
Yeah,
every time she goes down to like continue watching, it's like 10 other things until she gets to that, even though it's the last. Just all the stuff they kind of try to push on you. It's just bizarre. But it doesn't surprise me that they've also managed to screw up video games too. But hey, it's Netflix.
I'm not even subscribed to Netflix anymore. I killed my subscription. I'm like, I'll reactivate it when Arcane
What's
Season
funny
2
is
comes
my
out.
brother actually was like, "Hey, I know you got to pay for password sharing now. I'll pay for it because I share my password with him because he just didn't want to like redo all his like likes and watches and all that stuff. He's like, it's not worth it to me. I'll just pay a year for password sharing for you. I was like, you get your own account. Basically, like, nah, I just don't want to deal with it. So I kept it because my brother paid for it. So shout out to Colin if he's listening. Thanks, bud. So,
Thanks, Kappa's bro.
sometimes listens, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it looked cool. I thought it was kind of like a quirky, like you probably thought like an adventure-y type game, but I didn't get a tactics vibe at all from it. So
Yeah, I thought this was like pure narrative adventure. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised because Golf Club Wasteland was, for all its like rich narrative and rich world building, was at its core a really difficult 2D golf game. So I shouldn't be surprised that this is also a very mechanics focused kind of experience.
back in that crazy day of a golf game a month.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah, I'm.
yeah, always excited to see more stuff from Demagog Studio.
I think this is kind of where I stopped watching. I think you've got a few more after this. The only other thing I watched was the OTK Games Fest thing or whatever. I watched a couple minutes of it just because.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch any of
it's
that. Was
nothing.
there anything
No.
cool there?
I think streamers, I think, for a long time have tried to kind of tie themselves into the business side of things, and the business side has tried to tie themselves into streamers in certain ways, and it never really feels organic, right? Because these guys are talking about tiny indie games, and they all make their name playing either the same games all the time or variety games and shitting on them, right? So it's a weird part to ask them to go out there and advertise games because you know damn well they're not going to play it, right? And two, if they do play, it's probably to make fun of for their audience who's going to just make fun of your indie game that you put a lot of work in, right? So I don't know. The vibe was kind of like, look at this quirky
That
thing,
feels so
you know?
like mean spirited.
But it's true. I mean, I'm not even just saying OTK. I'm saying that's what streamers do, right? A lot of
Yeah.
variety ones are like awful game night, and it's like some passion project indie game that somebody spent, hours and hours to create. And I'm not saying I don't think it's shit. I'm a mystery science theorist. I get it. You know what I mean? I get the point of making fun of a bad game, but it's weird to then say basically, hey, go advertise our game that you're going to probably just play to make fun of if you play it at all. You know? Um,
Yeah, like at the extreme, it's like Donkey establishing his own publishing
right.
label.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you watch Donkey to like get comedic and like watch him crap all
Yeah.
over some dumb
Yeah.
game, right?
And so in this the stream kind of, they weren't crapping on him, obviously. They were, you know what I mean? Check out this latest from whatever. And it was very, I would say very small, like indie games for the most part, right? And it just didn't feel genuine in either direction, right? Like clearly
Yeah.
I'm paying to have my game shown here, and clearly you're talking about being interested in it. And that's a business transaction. That's not a fun thing for anybody to watch. So it's kind of like what a weird vibe for this show. I mean, I'm reading probably a lot more into it, but it was definitely had the feel of, hey, these streamers will read the name of your game and then we'll show a trailer, and that's kind of all it was to me.
Yeah, I don't. How do I put this? I know for a fact that a lot of people in games media and influencer spheres, sorry, play a lot of indie games in their spare time, but that's not what they're out there making their name
Right.
doing. Like that's not what they're streaming on Twitch. When they do stream on Twitch, they're doing the whole Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing. So you're absolutely right. It feels disingenuous. Even if these people were genuinely excited, the fact that they've made their money not either ignoring indie games or crapping on them, like it's always going to feel a little slimy.
Right.
Even if these people genuinely are excited.
Because it seems to a lot of times that they're the ones who lead the charge. You know what I mean? Like games live and die on a lot of different things, and like these guys have killed games. There's no doubt about it. I don't think they meant to. I don't think they like doing it. I don't think they even realized they'd done it. But I would, if I had a game and I was a small studio, I would steer the fuck clear of that, just because I don't want to be part of that. You can get your show. There's 10 other ones. Day of the Devs or Intel, I'm sure would put your game, whatever. If you've got something worth showing, just feel really weird about something about that business transaction. I don't know. It's kind of pick me, maybe. That's kind of the feel I got on it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like the right venue for
Yeah.
that kind of game. One last conference that I wanted to very briefly discuss. RGG Studio did their own press conference. It was mostly extremely pointless and boring, but in large part because they showed the trailers that had been shown off at previous showcases, like at the Xbox showcase where they showed off Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Apparently now, like, here's a really confusing thing now. The entries in the series will continue to be numbered in Japan, where the series has always been known as Ryoga Gotoku, or Like a Dragon. So they just keep numbering them. But here, because they changed the name to Yakuza, but the games are not really about the Yakuza anymore, they've dropped the Yakuza and they've switched to Like a Dragon. But it would make sense to start numbering them at 8, so now they're all doing subtitles for the Western titles. So this one is being called Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and they're turning the 8 sideways to make the infinity
Look
symbol,
at
so they're kind of referencing the 8. But it's still super confusing because when they announced it at, I believe it was the Xbox showcase, everyone's like, "Is this yet another spin-off?" And no, they had to clarify later. This is Like a Dragon 8. We just can't call it that because we messed up our naming conventions.
I mean, what did I say at the beginning of the podcast? I wasn't kidding. Like, I literally can't remember which ones I've played. And these aren't like 20-minute games. These are multi-hour ones, and it's tough because like, did I play the English version, which is whatever, or the Yakuza, or the pre-series, or Zero, or like there's so many little weird names to that series. Just get on board with one or the other.
I will say they only really messed this up recently because up until Yakuza Like a Dragon, they're all numbered. I will say, okay, there's like when they did the remakes, Kiwami and Kiwami 2, those are remakes of Yakuza 1 and 2. So, okay, already they added some confusion by adding in the Kiwami instead of saying Yakuza 1 Remake, which would have been the right thing to do. But so I get why there's some confusion to begin with, but they really took it to another level by calling Yakuza 7 or Like a Dragon 7 Yakuza : Like a Dragon. I think that was like the original sin for just messing everything up going forward.
Like a Dragon doesn't even like make sense to me. Like what does that mean? Is it something from the series? Is it?
It is something from the series. So, it's the dragon tattoo on Kiryu's back.
But his tattoo says Like a Dragon, or is?
No, it's the idea that he is he's known throughout the series as the Dragon of Dojima.
Oh, okay.
So like his fighting style is reminiscent of like a
But what about calling like
a Japanese dragon,
like a dragon, or fight like a dragon? Like give me a little more to work there with. But because I always thought Like a Dragon,
like love a dragon, cherish a dragon.
Like, is there a friendly dragon? Or?
Snuggle up with a dragon.
I honestly never knew what it was from, so I was like, what does it mean, like a dragon? Because I wasn't making the connection with his tattoo, but I got a lot more Yakuza to play apparently.
Yeah, like a Dragon makes less sense now than before, because now Kiryu's no longer the main protagonist of the series, so you've taken away the namesake. I mean, Yakuza also doesn't make sense because Kiryu hasn't been a member of the Yakuza since, like, in Yakuza Kiwami, he leaves the Yakuza. He leaves the Yakuza in the first game in the series. So, like, why did they call it Yakuza to begin with over here? They should have just called it Like a Dragon to begin with, stayed with the literal Japanese translation, and just kept going with the numbers. But that original sin was many years ago at this point.
I sometimes feel like there's like a naming commission in Japan that's like, okay, look, this cannot make sense. Whatever we name it, like, get a couple colons in there, get people guessing. We just can't make it easy for them. But yeah, I don't know. That series I think is so cool in so many ways that I think when they present it to people, the real goal is to like get past. You got to show that game kind of in a way where you might spend your whole time racing slot cars and it's still actually really fun. And making it look like it's this hardcore brawler, I don't know if it always works. There's a lot more to that game than that. And I think if I'd have known that, I would have definitely started it a long time before I did.
If I could tally up the hours I've spent playing darts and the UFO capture minigame, I think I would faint from
like playing Outrun for like the high score. You know what I mean? Like little weird things like that. But I just think the game doesn't or the ads don't do a great job of showing you how weirdly eccentric but fun that actually is to do. Exactly. So yeah, it's a good series, but a little bit of work to do on the PR department, I think. And you know what? Maybe it was a great idea, honestly, to get it on Xbox, because I think you start to get that kind of exposure. Kind of a different audience who can, give you a little bit more of an idea of what they're into, I guess.
I mean, let's not forget, Yakuza 7 or Yakuza Like a Dragon was the Xbox Series X's big launch title.
That's wild.
Which is
very crazy.
I think I think Sega did the right thing in expanding the series horizon beyond PlayStation, and I guess technically the Wii U, because one of the games in the series ended up on Wii U.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah, it's
like,
like how much can you still grow on PlayStation? You know what I mean? Where you've always basically always been, right? Kind of feels like you're
I
either
mean,
into it or not at that point.
yeah, I will say that Yakuza 0, which was for a long time a PS4 exclusive, was really what grew the series in the
Hmm.
West.
Makes
But
sense because it's such
now that
a
they've figured out, now that they figured out that it's popular, um, it makes sense to expand that outward, and that's why they've put everything on PC. They've put it on Xbox. They really want people out there playing it. I would bet that they get like if the Switch successor is powerful enough, I bet they try to get it on the next Nintendo
yeah.
console as well.
That would be cool.
Because
That's the kind of game that only gets better with more people playing it. Feels like it's just starting to get some kind of like impetus behind it to keep going in that direction.
yeah, absolutely. That's I'm really excited for The Man Who Erased His Name, which is
Yeah,
coming later this year, and I'm going to
Creation
call it
Bob is
Yakuza 8.
great.
Infinite Wealth is the most
Oh yeah, yeah,
cringy
yeah.
subtitle ever.
I didn't like that one either. I was like, is it a cheat code? Like, that was a little
Exactly.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for whatever that turns out to be. It's going to be turn based like Yakuza 7. Coming, they say early 2024. It might get
Yeah.
delayed at this point. They did show off a clip from the at the RGG Summit conference. They did show off a clip from Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which has story spoilers that raise a lot of questions. I don't know if you want me to spoil what it's about, or we don't have to
Give like
talk
a
about it.
2 second pause for people who do want to. Yeah. Skip 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it.
Skip 30 seconds if you don't want to hear any spoilers. In this clip, it is revealed that Ichiban proposed to Sayako, and she got extremely angry and now refuses to talk to him and turn him down. Which raises a lot of questions, like when did Ichiban and Sayako start dating? What was that whole thing all about? But whatever. If he's got a steady love interest and she happens to be the manager of a hostess bar, cool.
Yeah.
I'm down. Whatever they're planning to do. Let's see what happens. Spoilers are over now. So that was like I think pretty much all the conferences we watched. I don't know if you watched Day of the Devs or Wholesome Direct. I didn't. I also didn't get a chance to watch the extended
I
Xbox
watched a little
showcase.
bit of that, but more like, I kind of tuned in and out of that one. I wasn't really like watching for anything specific. It was just kind of more of, which I thought was kind of
Yeah.
smart. Like I was saying earlier, at least they gave it to you in the same place, and you didn't have to go search it for yourself if you wanted to just get everything a little bit deeper. I thought that was kind of smart. Um,
Exactly. They had some reveals there too. They revealed Hi-Fi Rush. I think a free
yeah,
update
yeah, that's
DLC
true.
for
Yeah,
everyone, which that game hit really well for a lot of people, myself included. I love that game. I'm probably not going to go back to it, but for the folks who are really into it, I'm glad they're getting more of it. Then they also showed off more of the Lamplighters League, which I know
yeah,
you were into because I
yeah.
showed it to you earlier. So I'm down for that like pulp adventure aesthetic.
It looked very cool in
I
action
absolutely.
too. So, want to kind of see where that one goes.
Yeah, there are a lot of tactics
Hmm.
games coming out this year. I don't think I'm going to be able to play them all. And this is what I wanted to play that I probably won't get a chance to play because there are too many games. But in a universe where I were rich and didn't have a full-time job, this would definitely be on
Yeah,
my list
but
of things to
it
play.
is interesting the number of tactics games that have kind of been put out there, and in a way where it's like we're taking a series that maybe you know and love, and this is the tactics version of it. Um, it's cool. I mean, I've always liked tactics games, and I think one of the things about tactics games that maybe is a little bit different than RPGs is you can take your time telling the story a little bit more. I've always thought that, right? Like you've got a lot of, from point A to point B to get to, and the game doesn't force you to feel like you need a rush. In tactics games, you can take your time, level up, do these kind of things. So, um, I'll be,
Yeah, you got a lot of
yeah,
runway.
I'll be
Yeah.
wanting to see if this is something that continues, where, hey, if you're gonna tell a long form RPG story, maybe do it through a tactics game, because I think I don't know like conventional wisdom or whatever is on tactics games, but I think they've been considered pretty niche as far as who's playing it and what they're doing with it.
Yeah, not a lot of them have gone super duper mainstream. Of course,
Yeah.
XCOM is and XCOM 2 are kind of the famous examples of ones that have gone mainstream. Also, Mario Rabbids, but famously the sequel really, really underperformed. I'm not part of the problem. I bought that game. I never finished it. I've been playing it on and off. I just haven't had time to
Mhm.
really play it. Really do want to go back to it and finish it. And there's been others that have hit a little bit, like obviously going back to Final Fantasy
Uh-huh.
Tactics, which was huge. So it's this. You're right. It's like this niche that has like flare ups of
Right.
popularity,
And
if you
it's like,
will.
do we quit every time it starts getting unpopular again, or do we think that there's legs here? We keep pushing it, as long as we can, and making sure that it keeps walking, basically.
I hope it keeps walking. Like even if it is a genre that I dip in and out of, I want to see it
Yeah.
succeed. Like I was bummed that Midnight Suns didn't hit big. It's not even a game that I'm ever going to play. I'm just bummed that that game didn't
That's
commercially
such a
shine.
it's such a head scratcher, and I really think victim of the marketing more than what was actually shown. Because I mean, there was definitely things that like talking about that game on the avocado. I was like, I had no clue, and I watched a lot about that game, and there was always like moments when I was like, wait, that's a thing. Like I thought it was a card battler for a long time, you know, like
Yeah, because they emphasized the card system so
yes,
much, and they didn't make it clear the cards are just like your
like
attack selection. So
yeah.
you go in with like a limited number of certain types of moves or what have you, but otherwise it's like tactical combat on your like underlying grid, a la
Yeah, and
XCOM.
and I mean, I don't think that was my fault. I did kind of pay attention to it a lot, but I think what they chose to highlight, like you were saying, I mean, it really made it feel like something that maybe they thought Card Battler is more popular than Tactics, so emphasize that. I don't know. I would probably disagree with that, but I mean, hey, that's the angle they went with, and I think there's maybe pros and cons to advertising games a certain way in that case, and hoping that you pick the right one. But yeah, big old flop there.
Yeah. The other thing they advertised a lot about it was like the personal interactions with your
Right.
squad, just like
Yeah.
Fire Emblem, which I neglected to mention earlier. And Three Houses was huge. We all know that was all about interacting with your squad. But that worked for Three Houses, and I don't know that that approach, at least from a marketing perspective,
Yeah, I mean,
works
because
for everything
you're not going to
else.
make Ghost Rider date Wolverine. I think that's always the angle that they're going with for in Fire Emblem. Like, well, we can make babies or something, but yeah,
Yeah, but you can definitely make your one cute student date your other cute
exactly.
student.
So yeah, that was kind of the mainline shows that I watched. I don't think there was much else in there that I thought, but I think the thing that you've got here that I kind of most agree with is like it's kind of felt successful. This felt like an adequate replacement for E3. I don't feel like I was like walking away like missing stuff or not feeling like I heard what I wanted to hear, or there was no announcements, or it was flat, or there was bad shows. Felt it feels like the game industry is kind of figured this out mostly, right? I don't think they've all figured out the direct. I think only Nintendo has figured out the direct, and everybody else is still kind of struggling with that. But I feel like E3 is something well, now Summer Games. I feel like this is something they conceptually get, and they're less worried about winning this now that it's Summer Games, and more kind of tied into this is how our releases and our announcements work. I think Xbox tying itself to kind of like they always kind of hit on this narrative in the Xbox show where it's like this is stuff you're going to be playing. It's within a year and it's going to be on Game Pass, and just hitting that over and over and over and over again is really going to start paying off. I really do think that. These aren't things 10 years down the line. These are games you're going to be playing soon, and putting dates behind stuff and things like that is going to be a smart play eventually. And I think it's already
I
getting there.
I think it backfired a bit on them
Yes,
last year.
exactly.
because they committed a bit too heavily. Here, by not committing so much to the next 12 months and being able to say, it's going to come when it's going to come, but it's happening in 2024. I believe that more than this is going to hit in 12 months. There are not going to be any delays. There are not going to be any complications. You're going to be playing this in 12 months. We know how video game development happens. We know that's not feasible, plausible, believable. So giving themselves a little bit more leeway made everything more believable and allowed the audience, I think, to have a little bit more confidence in what they're saying.
And so when you walk away, you're like, this feels less like an advertising pitch and more like, get excited because this is coming. Not everything had a date, of course, but hey, this is what you're going to be playing very shortly. And that to me is the success of the Xbox show versus the failure of other ones, is them saying, get excited. And that's smart. I think everybody does say that, obviously, but I think it's a lot easier to deliver on when you're pointing to specific dates or times or even frames to get excited about things. And I don't know.
It looks now like they have stuff in the pipeline. I think Ubisoft was also to some extent successful with that approach. But they also did have a lot of content that made me kind of like scratch my head.
It's Ubisoft.
So it didn't. It's Ubisoft. They're a head scratching company.
They always gotta have like one or two things that are like, what the fuck is this?
Like we still don't have a sturdy release frame for Skull and Bones. We have no idea.
Skull and Bones could come out tomorrow. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'd be surprised.
Can't come out tomorrow because the closed beta they scheduled was for August. So we know it's after August. When after August?
Well, last time they did a closed beta, they were begging people to play it. You know what I mean? Like, which usually it's like the other way around. 10 people sign up for it, but it's like they were running out of people to actually play the beta, and people were playing it once and not logging back in. That's not good, So,
is this still a MOBA? Like, what is this game? I don't even understand. They have utterly failed to explain what I would do in this game. And it's the exact same problem that PlayStation had at their conference. You have to tell me what I'm doing here, or if, it's not a game that's really mechanics focused, what am I going to be feeling when I play this game? How am I going to be processing the information this game is throwing at me?
This was early on. One of the biggest things they said with that game is you don't leave the ship. I don't know if that's changed. It could have, right? But
I think it definitely has changed.
I remember that being such like a misstep. Like, do you guys fundamentally not understand pirates? Do you know what a pirate is?
They go on land. They dock their ships.
I don't understand what they were pushing for. And it was like a ship-based MOBA. I remember there was a game. God, I can't remember. I think it was like Leviathan or something like that.
Leviathan warships?
No. This was like a starship game where it might not have been a Leviathan, but some kind of name like that. Where basically it was a MOBA where you play as a gigantic starship, right? Like a battle cruiser type thing, and your ship is your character, and you go around and blast other people's ships, and you could be the speedy agility ship or the the hard tanking ship or something like that. It might have been even called something like battle cruisers or something like that, but that's kind of originally what I thought they were going for, right? But then it was kind of like, no, it's not really that, and you can raid other ships, but you can't really take stuff from them. You can lose stuff. I remember that was a thing for a while. Like, they were kind of going for like a Tarkov feel, like you can lose stuff from your ship, and people were like, that sounds awful, and then that went away. It just kind of like felt like a game that was being designed by committee, as everybody was just kind of coming along being like, the fuck game is this? Well, what are you guys doing? And then they never even knew.
That's what the exposés on the game have indicated. And what really, really, I don't want to say bothers, because I'm not invested in this, but let's say what really bothers me about this game and the way it's being advertised is I still don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's a live service game, whether it has a clear beginning and end, whether it I can play co-op, whether it's single player. I have no idea what I do in this game, yet I've had it advertised to me for 4 or 5 years.
And when the stuff they've also advertised you feels or sounds shitty or dumb, like that's a failure, right? Like, hey, you're gonna be able to do this. Well, I don't want to do that. Oh, well, you're gonna be able to do this. Well, I don't want to do that either. Like, okay, well, in my pirate game, if you're telling me that I can't be a pirate, I'm kind of checking out, Um, so I don't know. I'm actually like I like pirate games. I think piracy games are cool, but what they've been kind of describing and pushing for so long doesn't sound like a pirate game. It doesn't even sound like a game sometimes. It just sounds like like a social experiment or something. And I don't know.
I mean, if you want to make that, Sea of Thieves
Yeah,
already exists.
and despite all the odds, that hung around long enough to become, I think, a pretty good hit. So that's kind of tough, when you...
Yeah, because that game was disastrously bad when it launched, and now it's got a Monkey Island tie-in.
That did look pretty fun, actually. I was surprised at how close into Monkey Island they were able to get some of that stuff. Like they had like they were ziplining with the chicken. Little things like that I thought were pretty cool.
Yeah. They're really, like, at least mining the surface elements of Monkey Island really well. But yeah, like, if I don't want Sea of Thieves out of this, what I want is a single-player pirate RPG. Like, basically, give me Risen, but not awful.
Oh, Risen, man. That one was... I remember, like, you wash up on shore and, like, you spend the next 10 minutes trying to find a ham sandwich. What a game.
Like, the non-Eurojank version
Was that by the Gothic guys? Is that who did that?
I think it was Piranha Bytes. I'll have to look this up. So now I think Piranha Bytes does Elex. I've heard Elex is not very good.
Elex. It was very forgettable. That's kind of like a more sci-fi though, I think.
Yeah, that's like sci-fi, like with some magic. I'm not entirely
like,
sure what's going on there.
Like a cyborgy thing. I remember like having like pick up parts to upgrade myself and stuff like that. But I mean, it was forgettable, very forgettable. So
yeah. So yeah, overall, Summer Game Fest, I think it doesn't replace E3 entirely, in my opinion. But I think press, from what I can tell, I've been listening to some podcasts after the showcases and the event. Press seemed to be pretty satisfied with this because it's essentially E3, but just press and influencers and none of the other industry people. So it's a lot more intimate of a setting and not as crowded and stressful and awful.
Yeah. The press always is kind of interesting for a lot of these game things, right? Like what is even the press these days? I feel like is kind of, like a little bit changing every other month. Is it bloggers? Is it influencers? Is it streamers? Is it whatever? But I don't know. I don't know that there's much of a future for this that isn't just here's our games, come take a look at them, and we're going to put them on YouTube anyway. Down the line.
I feel like that's exactly what SGF did. It's essentially just, from what I understand this year, essentially just all the press parts of E3. None of the trade show stuff, no show floor. It's very much just like, come try our games, make appointments. It's essentially just a much smaller conference. I've heard it described going from 20,000 attendees down to 800, which is a lot more manageable. We used to have all the
gadgets and shit too. You know what I mean? And like,
you
would have like Corsair,
a lot of hardware folks,
keyboards or whatever at it.
Yeah, a lot of peripheral folks, a lot of hardware folks.
So let's do this.
I think those will all like move to CES now.
This was too much. So, I think you can get by. What were there? Maybe total 10 streams. Something like that.
Oh, there were more than 10.
Too much.
There were way more than 10.
Too much.
Like 20.
Yeah, I think you can probably cut it down in half, and you still have enough to cut after that, even if you wanted to.
I think the issue is that so many of these are not official SGF streams. Like PC Gaming Show, I don't think was officially partnered. Might have been this year. I'm not sure. But anything the Mix put on, like Guerrilla Collective, Black Voices in Gaming, Games for Games, none of that was officially part of SGF. Upload VR, I don't think was officially part of
We barely
SGF.
talked
So
about VR at all, huh?
yeah, we're not. This is again. I am not
Oh,
a
yeah,
VR
me
person. This is not me like dunking on VR. I think VR is pretty cool. It's just I would not have anything to contribute to that. I've played like 4 VR games at my friend's
just from the
place.
perspective of like 3 years ago, it seemed like this is it. Like everything was VR this, VR that. It's gonna have a VR port, and I can't. I'm sure there was probably some stuff at Sony that was VR related because I know they just released their
PSVR 2.
but I can't remember anything in any of their shows even pushing VR, which is weird because of Apple's fucking weirdo.
It's that like $3,500
I can't believe that.
headset.
I know there's gonna be people who are gonna buy it, but my God, I'm looking at my 4090 custom built PC, and like that thing is more expensive to watch YouTube videos in AR. Cause I don't even, is it VR? I don't know. That thing is bizarre to me though.
It's like combo
VR,
VR,
yeah.
AR.
And I know it's for sure it's AR, but I mean, what the hell? That's pretty wild. $3,500 is a shitload of money. You could buy like every console and like a 80-inch screen to play them all on, and whatever. Someone will buy it, I'm sure. Not me though.
Yeah, I'm not that guy. I'm not spending a dime on on that thing because it's stupid. And I say this as someone who owns an iPhone. No, this is stupid.
Let's my tops if I want to, and I think it's insane, but also cool that we both ended up with our game of show being Avatar. By the way, I love that. What did you have for like kind of like the other top ones that you had?
I think I overlap a lot with you. Avatar, Starfield, Clockwork Revolution were my big ones. And the other ones that I thought looked really cool to me were Dungeons of Hinterberg, Metaphor Fantasio, however you say that, and all the stuff they showed up at Tribeca Games. I thought that was a really dope showcase.
Mine were, I mean, Avatar, of course. I went with Space Marine. I'm just really excited about that. Starfield, of course, Clockwork Revolution, and then my other one, kind of more from the perspective I really just want to see what this is about, is the John Carpenter one, the Toxic Command.
Oh yeah,
that was my other one. But that one can 100% go either way. I'm just more interested in it from the John Carpenter angle, and like I said, World War Z to me was kind of a sneaky under the radar hit. So those were my 5. And it's interesting that we have 3 overlaps, and I think pretty solid glowing overlaps between those 3 too.
I will say, I think when we do this podcast, we give the impression that we're a lot farther apart on our game preferences than we actually are. I think I've made this point before. I didn't magically wake up one day and stop liking first-person shooters. I think the genre kind of left me for a little while, and now we're getting some of that back, which is really exciting.
It's like
same with Western RPGs. I think they've really left me in the past few years, and I'm so excited that they seem to be coming back.
That's how I feel about Nintendo. I feel like I have left Nintendo. I don't know. I don't know what happened. We broke up. I used to call them all the time, and then they kind of ghosted me. But yeah, I get what you mean, because sometimes it just does feel like you fall out of a genre or a company or a console or something like that. But you can always get back on that wagon. It doesn't ever completely end. But yeah, I was always, when we started, it was always I was the more AAA, shooter guy, and then you're more indie. I think we've kind of worked our way both a little bit more to the middle recently, partly because of our taste, but also because I kind of feel like that's what gaming in general has been doing.
They filled in that AA a lot in the past few years, and I still love my indie games. My current game of the year is a visual novel mostly developed by one person, but that's if like I would not be surprised if that stays my number one and then number two ends up being
Yeah, and
Starfield. Like that is an entirely
like
possible
last year
scenario.
mine was Pentiment, and this year it might be Starfield. You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty big swing, you know. But then you play Pentiment and you're like, oh, this makes sense. I mean, this should be something people talk about for a game of the year. Um,
It was. It was
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, overall, pretty pleased with the whole Summer Game Fest complex. I think this was as good a replacement as we're going to get for E3
yeah,
season.
I agree.
And I we got shown off a lot of cool games. I will say I came down really hard on Star Wars Outlaws. I am very curious to see
Yeah,
more of it because that is going to determine my opinion.
I think we're both on the
If we
same page
see
there, actually.
Yeah, if we see like more of this game, like a different aspect of this game that really gives me an idea of okay, I understand why this is an open world game. I understand all the cool stuff you can do in here. I'm on board. Like I would be thrilled if that outcome were to happen, and then I'll bite my tongue all day long. But if they can't show more of that, then yes, I think I'll be
Yeah,
like, correct in
it's
my
just
initial
what
assessment.
like we were saying earlier. It's what were they showing? The best that they got, or this is what we've got ready to show, or we think this is what the audience wants to see, which is just a general flavor of the whole thing. That's kind of what I'm curious to see. What was what we were shown? Because if, like I said, if that's the bulk of the game, I'm definitely a little bit, kind of thinking.
Oh yeah, if that's the bulk of the
Yeah.
game, I'm out. If that is the whole gameplay loop, I'm totally out. But if that is a tiny part of all the stuff you can do in that game, I'm right
Because I
back
mean,
on
I
board.
think about like the division, like truthfully, like they kind of just have you go from area to area doing fetch quests or shooting people. There was not a lot of interaction with the division world that was dialogue trees or you know what I mean. There wasn't a lot of deep there. Every situation you had was solved by shooting something, which works for a shooter, but I didn't get the feeling that that's what they wanted this to be. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, like it's one of those things that could completely just go
Yeah.
both ways. And I'm happy to like sit around shooting people. I do a little lot in video games, but like it, I don't want that to be the only
Yeah,
thing I do.
it does make you think too about like, we've talked about before, like the ways you can interact with the world. Is shooting things the most interesting thing you can do in a Star Wars game? I don't know, maybe. I mean, like, but I would love to see them embrace exploration or building teams, or I don't even know what. I mean, what's the quintessential Star Wars experience at this point? But um, yeah,
I don't
yeah,
even know because I have very little personal investment in Star Wars. I don't dislike Star Wars. I've just
like I feel.
I got to Star Wars at such an old age, right? I watched my first Star Wars film at age
Yeah.
24.
But
Like,
like when you talk to the people on the avocado who are like Star Wars or Star Trek fans, like they can explain to you a million reasons why they're Star Trek fans, right? And like with Star Wars, it's just kind of like, well, I liked it growing up. You know what I mean? Like this is always kind of what it feels like. There's not a lot of like, it inspires me or like it makes me think of a better world or I like to envision utopia. Like there's none of that. It's always just kind of like cool scenes. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's harder for someone that's come into it late to really like jump onto no matter what, because you don't have that. I watched it with my dad type memories of it. You just have, I saw it in a megaplex and bought my Jar Jar cup. So that's kind of the difference. And I'm not a big Trek fan either, but just hearing people talk about it is this like amazing, moving thing, whereas like I don't get that at all with Star Wars.
yeah, again, it really depends on like what your experiences are growing up with it. Um, and I guess like for you and me, we're not invested in
No.
it. For other people, that might be, and then they can articulate that to us. So like, no disrespect to anyone who's like a huge Star Wars nerd. It's just it's such a
I think even
disadvantage
like,
for someone like me
yeah,
who's
even
not.
among I think the huge Star Wars nerds at this point, there's kind of like that weird like push and pull in a lot of ways. Like, what is this series? What is it the Mandalorian? Is it Baby Yoda? Can we finally get away from Skywalkers? There's a lot going on right now in Star Wars. Like I think in the fandom even, but
I mean, we definitely can't get away from
oh man,
Palpatine.
that motherfucker will not die. He just keeps popping up, right?
The dead speak.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I think they know that some of that shit is a little bit cringy or whatever you're gonna say, but I think that they're at least hoping that, and I've long said the best thing Star Wars ever did was KOTOR, and there's no reason this can't be that level, right, of like rebirth for damn near the whole thing, because I feel like if I don't watch 500 shows right now, I can't keep up with a lot of Marvel stuff, and I usually do watch 500 shows, but I don't think that Star Wars is going to fit in there either, so watching.
I mean, I feel like if you don't watch 500 shows, you can't keep up with Star Wars anymore.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and it's like I was watching the new season of Mandalorian, and people are like, "Well, if you haven't seen Clone Wars," I'm like, "What the hell's Clone Wars?" It's like a cartoon with like 5,000 episodes. So like you're like, "Oh, geez, here we go." I got to dive into a whole new universe, but
I mean,
yeah.
This is why I never got into superhero comics. I'm like, where do I even begin? Where do I find all these issues? How do I even like begin to untangle this web? And like it's so disheartening to see that come to like geek media in terms of like TV series and movies. I don't mind a little bit of continuity, but at a certain point it becomes almost hostile and almost like a method of its own gatekeeping.
Ending, I would say the best example of how to do it was Game of Thrones, right? Read the book or don't read the book. You kind of had that option, but you were getting a story one way or another, right? And people who didn't read the books loved it just as much. People who did read the books had a little bit of knowledge about what was going on and why it was going on, up until it all kind of fell apart. But, there's a way to do that right. And I think Game of Thrones is such a good example of saying, like, there can be two ways to approach this. Neither one's the right way. They're just different. And then when you start to get into Star Wars, it's like you end up talking so much about canon, I've noticed. Like I'm just saying this as kind of like a casual outsider looking in type fan. Oh, well, this happened in the extended universe, but Disney said the extended universe doesn't matter, but they're bringing this back, so apparently this extended universe does matter. It's like, I would find that shit exhausting, like. Yeah.
It is. It absolutely
like,
is.
I read it. Guess what? It's real to me. I can't be like, okay, mine, delete. So yeah.
Yeah, we have to make a generation of teenagers like completely forget about Mara Jade,
exactly.
and that made a bunch of people super angry.
Then they end up coming back. But yeah.
Did she come back? I have no idea. I don't know enough about Star Wars.
But yeah, this was. I think we finally seen like E3 going forward, right? Where everybody's got their own directs, everybody's got their own announcements. You come to the show, you make one or two splashes, and then you get back to, business as usual. And I do like that the big players showed up for the most part, and you got to see most of the big people that you would normally see at an E3. Nintendo wouldn't show up at an E3 no matter what anyway. I don't think they've shown up in a long time, right? Even before it?
No. It was Sony that dropped it. Nintendo was supported E3 pretty much till the end.
But they were doing their direct.
In fact, it was
at the same time.
Yeah. So what they pulled out of was the big stage show.
That's it. Yeah.
They were the first to pull out of doing a stage show, and then they switched to doing an E3 direct. But they maintained a large show floor presence. In fact, part of what made E3 so precarious this year is that Nintendo, I believe, was not returning to the show floor. So they had one of their typically large supporting partners.
Yeah, wasn't there.
Just wasn't going to be there. In fact, if Nintendo had signed on for E3 this year, it might have actually happened.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess to me they were so good at directs anyway. It just seemed like E3 kind of was, superfluous to them, like as in terms of needing it to be what they hype their games on, right?
Like E3 only served a purpose of connecting with the press.
And then I think what you got with Nintendo is one way or another, you kind of know what they're working on, right? And then it's just really about figuring out.
Well, Yeah, typically you do. Right now is a very bizarre
Right.
situation where you have no idea what Nintendo's doing, but I think it's because they're going to launch a new console
Yeah, yeah.
next year. I would guess probably
But
late
usually you
next
say,
year.
okay, well, just looking at the release cycle, we're looking at a Pikmin or
Yeah.
something, and then that's what everybody's waiting to hear about. Then the direct comes and they go, "Yep, here's the new Pikmin." Everybody acts surprised, and
Yeah.
but it's just kind of the cycle of not necessarily knowing the answers, but figuring out, hey, this is where they're going to be, and then not necessarily being surprised, but hey, um, you know, here it is, basically.
Yeah, what we know right now for Nintendo is Pikmin 4 is their next big game, and we have no idea after that. So that's why the next Nintendo Direct will be
Yeah.
fascinating. But we'll have to wait to see what that is. As for Summer Game Fest, I think what was nice, and this is a point you made earlier, what was nice about SGF is that we aren't really talking about winners and losers of the show. E3 almost turned into this
Mhm.
competition that where everyone was trying to one up each other, and this more just felt like everyone was trying to show off what they had on
Yeah.
hand, rather than establish any kind of competitive
Yeah, and
narrative.
I think it probably helps slash hurts that neither Microsoft or Sony really had. I guess Starfield, but I don't know that It's hard for me to figure out how big Starfield is, right? To me, it feels huge, but I'm a huge Bethesda fan, right? I don't know if Starfield is considered a system mover. I have no clue, right? I don't know if Bethesda games
I
are.
would say it is, but like, there's this thing where increasingly over, let's say, the past 10 years, the games, what the enthusiast press covers and what actually is popular have diverged
Right.
substantially.
Yeah.
Like, the enthusiast press goes wild for Persona, but Persona's pretty
Yeah.
niche. It doesn't sell more than 2 million copies. I mean, 2 million is a lot of copies, but based on how much they talk about Persona, that's
Mhm.
nothing compared to, say, GTA 5, which has sold, what, like 100
It's
million
selling like a
something at this
hundred
point?
thousand a month still, like somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, which is absolutely bonkers. And then you compare it to like all these huge games like Dead by Daylight, like what else is big in streaming? Like is Warface still big? I don't even
Yeah.
know. But like there's so many games that are big that don't get talked about in the press. Like you don't hear people talk about
Oh
Valorant all
yeah,
the time.
exactly.
We know what's going on in the
League of
background, but
Legends
it's
like
huge.
basically doesn't exist, and then it's like the most watched thing in the world with $1 million tournaments. If you're outside of that
Yeah,
esports bubble, you might be like, that game's
you
still
don't
around.
read
Yeah,
about it. And like so there is a press that is devoted to esports stuff. Like I think
yeah,
Dexerto is the
yeah,
site that covers this stuff. But for the most part, it's so not what Polygon or GameSpot is
mhm,
covering on a daily basis. So yeah, the press is excited for this. Will the wider gaming public latch onto this? I think the best predictor is how much they latched on to Fallout 4 and
yeah.
Skyrim, and I would guess that this is going to be huge.
So
But
that's kind of like,
we don't
but
know.
I mean, I think Sony went in there not having a ton. I think Microsoft had basically the one thing, which is why they gave 45 minutes of their hour and a half to it. you know. But I don't. There was no Halo. There was no Gears. There was no, Last of Us. There was no. There was a. It was kind of, you know, at least to me. I don't know. Like I said, if Starfield is that big, then I'm a little bit more surprised than that. But I don't think that Microsoft needed to kick up another gear for anything up more than what they did with Starfield. I think it was like the exact appropriate amount of time and hype for an RPG, I guess.
Yeah, uh, like I mentioned earlier, Microsoft managed to put on a damn good showcase without Halo
Mhm.
or Gears. So maybe this is the appropriate level of hype that they want to generate across their portfolio. It remains
Which
to be
is
seen.
smart
We'll
because with
see
all that time to
what they
sit down
turn
with
out.
Starfield, like I said, like every little layer they put on it was like it was like eating lasagna. You know what I mean? Like you're getting through and you're getting each little like different like, oh wow, they thought of that. That's in there. Oh wow, that's smart. You know, and so like when you're kind of going through it in that level of detail, if you were kind of on the fence, I really feel like that. You know,
I think they needed that
yeah,
45
yeah,
minute deep dive. I think they really needed to show all those details, because the big worry, and I think this is an understandable worry given what Skyrim and Fallout 3 and 4 were, is that this game would be, a mile long and an inch deep, to use imperial measurements
oh,
as a Canadian. A kilometer long and a centimeter deep. You know what I mean, right? Like, I think that was the
yeah,
worry, and I think they managed to assuage that fear by showing off all the detail and the depth. Because otherwise, yeah, I would have gone in assuming this was a pretty shallow, very pretty space game where you shoot things and sell them to people in cities, and then you go on your spaceship to another planet where you shoot things and then sell things to people in cities. So I'm very glad that we got that depth. I'm very curious to see what the next Sony showcase looks
yeah.
like, because I don't think they're going to be able to pull off another showcase like this based on the feedback they got. And I am very curious to see what a lot of these games turn out to
Yeah.
be, because this was a really interesting summer season.
I I'm very surprised that I guess more of the reaction to Sony than what Sony put together. I think that still remains kind of like my biggest like wow, this was I didn't expect it to be that hard where like everybody on the internet seemed to be like no, this is unacceptable. Sony needs to come way more. I was like, "Ah, it's about what I expected." I mean,
I
but the
I think I gotta be like, I gotta like maybe a little too critical of the enthusiast press here and like games media folks. I think they kind of set their own
yeah,
expectations.
yeah. Like
Like,
Sony wasn't promising
it's
anything,
not
so they assumed there had to be some like secret thing in the background or something.
like, you can't keep
Yeah.
trolling yourselves
Yeah.
like this, right? Like, it's cool to get wild and like fantasize about what you're gonna see. I get the hype cycle. I totally understand why they do this. But at a certain point, you have to realize, unless something has been promised to you, no promises were broken,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like,
No one had come along and told you like, "Oh yeah, there's something big here," and then you just assumed, that there was. But uh,
like, remember when the Switch Pro didn't happen, and a whole lot of people were
yeah,
really
yeah,
mad
yeah.
about that? And I was like, you had one report made by one Bloomberg reporter that was published about this, and you got it in your heads that this was a sure, definite thing that was definitely going to happen. But Nintendo never
Yep.
promises to you. Why are you so
Yeah.
angry?
Yeah.
Right? And this kind of reminded me of that. Like, Sony did not promise that they're going to show off the new game from Sony Santa Monica. They did not promise that they're going to show you more of the Last of Us multiplayer game. They did not promise that they're going to show you what Ben's studio has been working on. Like, you put that in your
Do
own
you think
head.
that the enthusiast press is more hoping to be the one that was right about guessing that this happened, or do you think they're just they're just wrong? What do you think?
I think it's a mixture of optimism and just the general, like, how do I put this? I don't think there's anything cynical or
Mhm.
disingenuous when they try to generate hype. Um, I think they are genuinely people who want to be hyped about the stuff they
Yeah.
talk about. That is totally fine. But I think sometimes what they fail to communicate is any degree of epistemic humility, in the sense that, like, hey, this could happen, but there's like a
You know,
5% shot of
the
it
the
happening.
closest parallel I have is paying attention to a lot of sports, particularly NFL. Right, there's always this kind of rush to be the first person who gets the new signing right, or the new contract, or things like that. Right, um, there's always that pressure to be that person who guessed right. You know, so much so that there's people who just go on Twitter and just spout bullshit. You know what I mean? Because the
Like fake
yeah,
leakers for video
yeah, or
games.
like hey, we've been hearing rumors from this camp that he's looking at signing here, and there's no rumors, there's no camp, there's nothing else, but they're just hoping to be the one who is right because it gets them an absolute ton of credibility otherwise. You know what I mean? There's people who have make or break their career on being the first person to basically guess about a signing or something like that. So I was wondering if you kind of thought that's what was going on here, because I don't know where the anger for the Sony press came from, because I didn't see a lot promised. I pretty much got what I expected, so I was a little bit more shocked when everybody was like, "What a stinker! Where's this? Where's that? Where's that?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, it's E3. Nothing's guaranteed, you know."
Yeah, I would say I was disappointed in what was
Yeah,
shown off. I don't think this was a good showcase. I think it was a little worrying, to be frank, but I don't understand the
same.
anger.
Yeah,
And like, I'm down. You know me, I'm down to be angry at corporations any day of the week. But like, this is not one of the reasons I'd be angry at a
yeah.
corporation.
Ready? How dare you?
Like, how dare you not advertise to me what I wanted advertised to me?
Here,
Like,
yeah,
forget about
yeah.
forget about how you underpay your workers and keep them on contract labor or any of that nonsense. I'm mad because you didn't show me an ad for a game you never promised to show me an
Yeah.
ad for. I don't know. That's just
It
silly.
is very silly, and like especially like how you said it. Like you never said this would be here. So if it's not here, why are people angry? You set yourself up that would be there, and when it's not, it's not. You know.
Like, you want to be mad at Sony, be mad at them for like fostering years of sexist discrimination within their
Yeah.
offices. Like, that's a real reason to be mad at Sony, not like you didn't show me like a Last of Us multiplayer game that may or may not eventually
Right,
happen.
right, yeah, and because
It's
some guy
just
somewhere on Twitter
silly.
said, my uncle's friend's cousin told me that the big thing at Sony is going to be, and it's like, no, yeah, that's why I think maybe, like you said, it's really interested where Nintendo is, because usually that's how they used to operate, right? This is what we're working on next. Everybody kind of knows, and then it's just waiting to be announced. So yeah, I think getting to kind of see, actually Nintendo kind of operating in the world that everybody else does now might be kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get more information from them shortly. But again, they haven't promised me
No.
anything. If they don't show me Astral Chain 2 at the next
Yeah, I'm not
direct, I'm
angry.
not going to be like I'm not going to be traveling to Redmond to knock on Nintendo America's door.
Yeah.
Wait, no, their Canadian offices are
Oh,
in
you got a
Toronto
lot less
now, I
further to
think.
drive.
Or, no, they're in Vancouver or Toronto. I don't even know. I mean, it's far. I'm not walking down there either way. I don't live anywhere near
Hey,
those
I'm Merv.
cities.
Where's your games,
Uh,
dude?
Yeah. Don't you know me? I run the Avocado Games Cast, the 32nd most popular gaming podcast in
You dropped that
Estonia.
bomb. We're getting right in the door. Don't worry.
Yeah. Give me some credentials here. So I think that's all we wanted to discuss about Summer Game Fest. Anything else you
No,
wanted
I
to bring
mean,
up?
yeah, I think we covered it as much as we could, because, like I said, oh boy, there was a lot of fests going on this year for sure. I was kind of surprised, like I said, it seemed to be kind of like so unfocused, but by the end of it all, I felt like I'd seen every game twice somehow. Um,
I feel like I saw too many. Like, this is a good problem to have. There are too many video games, too many things I want to play, too many things I'm excited about. This is how I want to feel about
yeah,
the industry. I like being excited about what's in the pipeline. Well, like, temporary expectations. I like we just said, I'm not going to work myself into a frenzy imagining a game that doesn't
yeah.
actually exist. I like what I saw. I'm not going to extrapolate too much from what I saw. And just based on the things I saw, I'm really excited for a lot of upcoming
Yeah, same.
games.
There was a lot where I can see myself making a lot of, like, Steam purchases. I can see myself playing a lot on Game Pass. There was enough out there that I thought was really kind of like varied in what I was seeing, where I this felt like, I mean, I fucking got to see RTSs, so getting to see stuff that was this varied and you know on the horizon, I think was really cool. I also think it's a knock on wood type situation, but I also kind of think COVID hit harder than they had estimated, and it wasn't as easy to just do all this shit on Zoom.
Like, yeah.
And I think 2022 really bore that out. I think that was the roughest year for a lot of these studios, and basically having to be like, yeah, this shit we thought we would be able to do, we can't. And having to admit that wasn't easy to a generally public who was like, in some ways they did make it sound like, oh, this is easy. We're just going to make these from, our offices. It's not a big deal. The games are still going to come out. I feel like that was maybe the wrong way to go with it. And instead of been like, hey, this is a global pandemic. We've never dealt with this. Nobody's ever dealt with this. The games will come out when they're ready. I really think that would have been smarter than kind of overselling how easy it is to develop a game over Zoom.
Yeah, it was not easy for studios to readjust their workflows. We know it's kind of leaked out a little bit. Like, Nintendo was extremely hard hit, and a lot of their games got delayed multiple years.
And I think if you'd have been more upfront with that, it would have been smarter than being trying to come in after the fact and be like, oh, COVID. And it's like, well, you guys kind of made it sound like COVID wasn't a big deal, and our quality will not be affected. We've got new systems. And no, everybody was affected. I mean, my job was affected. I wasn't making video games with 500 other people. So coming back into it, I really think that now we're kind of outside of that, hopefully, time frame. And I think maybe they did learn some efficiencies from that. But I'm not a big proponent of get back in the workplace, but I think if it makes sense and it's something that makes the job better and it's necessary, then maybe that's kind of the direction things start to go again.
I think there's also a lot of figuring out how to work from home, and once they figured out those workflows, I think they were able to get into
I can see that.
For a lot of studios, but you still get that 6-7 months of slowdown, and that affects things.
You start to see less bad things and more delays, which I think was a little bit of okay, this isn't ready, back to the drawing board, or that. I think that was smarter because that was actually dealing with the situation rather than trying to pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly. Yeah. The other thing I'll say about this Summer Game Fest was that it was really exciting to see such a diverse lineup of games, both in terms of what they're depicting and the characters they're depicting, also in terms of genre. Just seeing so many different games of so many different genres that, gaming now appeals to a really wide swath of people. And I think the right thing to do is to sell to all those people.
I was making fun of it kind of, but stuff like the Wholesome Game Direct and stuff. I think it's cool that at least we're still acknowledging that there's markets that aren't all just COD and Call of Duty, and also just
I love how COD and Call of Duty are different things now.
But COD and Battlefield. There's markets out there that just aren't looking to shoot things in the face. But also, I think indies can also suck up a lot of space when you're just kind of doing it all as the newest Twee Farmville sim is what you're all going to be playing. No, there's also other options in there. There's puzzle games, there's fighting games, there's this, there's that. So I really like when they kind of take their time to give everybody, hey, no matter what you're kind of into, something's out there. I think that's a real smart way to kind of keep pushing things along so that you can be inclusive with what's in your game, but you also can just be inclusive about what your game is. And I think that's kind of cool to see more and more games and more varieties and stuff.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think we're going to call this podcast to a close. If you'd like to keep up to date with our Avocado Games Cast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com. On that website, we post every episode along with a link dump so you can refer to things that we talked about in the episode. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. All you've got to do is search for Avocado Games Cast. And also absolutely make sure you check out The Avocado at the-avocado.org. It's a wonderful community full of folks who want to talk about not just video games, also movies, music, television, sports, books,
Star Wars.
You name it, we're talking about it. Definitely lots of Star Wars. Definitely lots of fun, not at all acrimonious debates about pizza toppings. We got it all. If you like pizza, or you like video games, or you like books or movies, or maybe you just want to share photos of the cool ducks who hang out at your pond, check out The Avocado. It will be a good time. Orange peels. Oh, yeah. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, oh, wait, that's me. You're talking about me. I love... I used to brag, just to explain what this is all about, I used to brag to a lot of people that I was extremely skilled at peeling clementines without breaking the peel, so it came off all in one piece. And a bunch of people on the forums were like, you can't do that. That requires too much skill. And I was like, oh, just watch me. I will prove I can do this. So every time I eat clementines, I show the fruits of my labor. I show that peel all in one piece, all nicely peeled with, with like that nice S shape. Or sometimes they got funky, and I like show off and make funky shapes in the peel, still all one piece. It's like art made out of citrus peels. It's the stupidest thing on the planet. And if you hang out on the avocado, you might catch some of those photos and look at my terrible citrus peel art.
You definitely get to see a couple.
Yeah, it's where we're at on the avocado. If you don't like that, though, we've got plenty of video game talk. We've got so many threads on video games. We do now weekly threads on different genres of video games. So if you want to share your top 5 3D platformers, we're talking about that right now. So check that out. All right. I think that concludes what we wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much, Kappa, for joining me. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next time. Take care, everyone.